Good evening, everyone. The October 16th, 2024 Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. I am Richard Kaplan, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Tonight, in addition to myself, we have members Inta Malice, Portia Clark, and Carol McCroskey, and Judy Freshman. Sorry. I did that last week. I didn't update my list. I don't know why you're missing. Also present is the professional staff, including Blake Bowen, Board of Zoning Appeals Coordinator, Meg Ryan, BZA Associate Planner, Brett Goldberg, BZA Associate Planner, and Mr. Stephen Rissy, Zoning Prims Supervisor. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please place your mobile devices in silent mode. Before we begin tonight's hearing, I will discuss the board's powers and procedures for tonight's hearing. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set forth in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests solely with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. First, the BZA can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1- and 2-family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. In order to approve a use permit, the Arlington zoning ordinance requires that this board find that the proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use zoning related policies of the county. In making these findings, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of the development with the surrounding neighborhood because of the structure's overall size, footprint, and placement are similar to those of the structures on the property surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees or foliage. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary and in the public interest, including but not limited to the duration of the use permit. This board does not have the authority to grant use permits to modify requirements for expanded housing option developments. Second, the BZA can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the need for a variance would not be shared generally by other properties, and such variance is not contrary to the purposes of the ordinance. Or that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability. In all variance cases, the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith and any hardship was not created by the applicant. That the variance granted will not be of a substantial detriment to the adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, and that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or reoccurring a nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, and that the granting of the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided under the zoning or subdivision ordinance. Third, the BZA shall hear and decide appeals of the zoning administrator from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of Title 15.2, Article 7 of the Code of Virginia. Now on to tonight's hybrid hearing. For those who are participating in person, on the front of the table, you will find a QR code linking to a copy of the application package, including the staff report for each case before us this evening. For those participating virtually, a copy of each application package can be found on the Arlington County BZA website. There is also a link in the chat for the application packages. I recommend that if you have not yet seen the report for your case, that you review that report before your case is called. If you are attending virtually and lose connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you are attending via Teams, Please keep yourself muted and cameras off until called upon. Turn off the sound on any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located in the meeting command bar. County staff does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for technical support assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally or have been previously provided in writing for the record during the assigned public testimony period. This evening, staff will call each case and will provide a brief staff report and recommendation. Next, board members will ask questions of staff that they may have. Applicants or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip online or is available on the table in the front of the room. After we hear from speakers for or against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. For tonight's hearing, this board has deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for applicants of appeals, 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances, 3 minutes for representatives of the organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals. After the board has gathered all the information we need and have discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Please be respectful of the time allotted. This is a public forum and tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county's website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether spoken or written, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Mr. Bowen, while I bring up my agenda here, I believe that the item number 17, which is V-11991-24-VA-1, will be heard tomorrow. And so that's item 17 on the agenda. Tomorrow is our carryover night, and so this item has already been carried over till tomorrow. So I apologize if anyone has come for that case tonight. Also, for the items towards the end of our agenda, if we don't get to them tonight, they'll be also carried over till tomorrow, but we're going to do our best to make it through the remaining 16 of these cases. Lastly, I also just wanted to thank Mr. Sutherland, who's clearly not here, for filling in for the last couple of meetings. I think this board appreciated his assistance in shepherding these cases through.
Yes, I would like to extend a thank you to Cedric Sutherland as well, who stood in as the acting BZA coordinator during my 6 weeks absence, and also like to extend a thank you to my colleagues on the BZA team and in the zoning division who kept things going with what ended up being our heaviest agenda of the year so far. So it ended up being a fairly convenient time for me to be off.
Good timing, right? I believe that is all the business that I have. There's no further business. Can you please call the first case?
Mr. Kaplan, before we get to the first case, I believe you did appoint
Your mic on?
Mr. What's that?
Is your mic on?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
That's better. Okay, I'll move a little closer. Mr. Kaplan, I believe you did appoint Mr. Sutherland as the acting BZA coordinator in my absence and secretary to the BZA. If it would, might be in your interest to reappoint me as the BZA secretary before getting into the proceedings.
I believe we did it just pending your return, so I don't know that we need to, but
I will defer to you on what you think is appropriate there. Okay.
I think we're good.
If that business is taken care of, I will jump right into the first case then.
Yes.
Okay, the first case on the agenda is case number V-11992-24-VA-1. This is a variance request by Logan Richardson, the owner, to permit a minimum distance between buildings of 9.6 feet and 10.1 feet instead of 20 feet as requested for a multiple family residential development with multiple main buildings regarding an egress window well to an existing nonconforming multiple family residential building in the RA 1426 zoning district on the premises known as 4429 36th Street South within the Arlington Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the variance request with conditions.
Thank you. Is there any supplemental for this?
We do not have any supplemental material for this case, nor do we have any speakers.
In reading the staff report, I believe the county board is acting on this issue later this week. Is that is what the county, if the county board acts, does that apply to this window well case?
We believe, of course, we don't exactly know what the county board will adopt, but the belief would be that the text amendment that is being proposed to the zoning ordinance will really annul the need for such variances in Fairlington.
Okay, thank you. Do my colleagues have any further questions for staff? Is the applicant with us?
Yes. Hi, I'm Logan Richardson.
Hi. Would you like to speak to your application?
Yes, I am applying for the egress window in the basement of my home as an additional emergency exit.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for the applicant? Discussion.
I have one
Frostman.
question. So is there any plan to change the use of the space for additional residents or anything like that? Or are you just adding the window well for safety reasons?
No, I am just adding a window well for safety reasons.
Discussion with the board.
I'll just make a brief statement if we're ready for that.
Please.
I think this is the kind of case that we've all recognized for some time is technically it could be fixed by a zoning ordinance amendment, but I think we have been, not by unanimous votes, but we've been voting to approve these because otherwise the applicants have no way to make these types of changes to their property within Shirlington or other multifamily uses. So I intend to vote for this, even though technically this could be fixed by the zoning ordinance. And I know the county board is planning to take it up on the 19th. And I hope that will solve this issue, which comes before us regularly. But as this applicant has already paid their fees and everything, I think we should deal with the matter.
Thank you. Anything further?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
Yeah, I'm one of the members that's perpetually a no vote for I think pretty obvious reasons that these cases have never really met the state standard for what a variance should be applied to. We have been put in the position of having to sort of go along to help out the neighbors, but it's a very awkward position for us to be in because we really are acting against the guidelines that we have been given. I also believe that had we been more strict about this in the beginning, perhaps this matter would have concluded much faster than the 2+ years that it's taken, and the numerous applicants that have had to come before us to pay fees, have their projects delayed. I think that might have been circumvented if we had taken a stricter view, but we are where we're at, and I'll be voting no, but I assume that this will pass.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Motion.
Ms. Clark.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the variance V-11992-24-VA-1, subject to the conditions listed.
A motion made by Ms. Clark and seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
No.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCruskey.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion passes 3-2. Mr. Bowen, I believe we have a similar case next.
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the next case on the agenda is a similar variance, case number V-11993-24-VA-1. This is a variance request by Byron Gonzalez on behalf of Nina Fight, the owner, to permit a minimum distance between building of 9.8 feet instead of 20 feet as required for a multiple family residential development with multiple main buildings regarding an interior structural alteration to an existing nonconforming multiple family residential building, including an interior alteration to remove a load-bearing kitchen wall in the RA 1426 zoning district on the premises known as 3430 South Utah Street A within the Arlington Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the variance request with conditions. Please note that we do have supplemental material for this case. This includes an email from the owner regarding their neighborhood outreach efforts, as well as a petition of support signed by one neighbor in the neighboring residential building to the north. And we do not have any speakers for this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any questions for staff? Is the speaker with us? Is the applicant with us?
It looks like they're virtual.
Yes, hello?
Hello, would you like to speak to your application?
Yes. This is, I'm actually Byron's wife. We're work together. Yeah, we're working with the resident in order to submit all the paperwork that was necessary for tonight.
I'm
Hello?
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you repeat what you said? Who are you with?
Yes, I'm with Byron. We're the
Good
contractors.
evening. How are you doing? This is Byron from GH Contractors. I'm here with my wife. We work together, so we both in the meeting.
I think we're having trouble hearing you. Are you with Harris Design?
We're with GH Contractors, and we are the appointed, I guess the appointed agent to speak on the residents on her behalf tonight. I don't think she was able to connect.
And we have something from you that says you're the agent?
Yes, it's in the statement. Yes.
We have something from Harris Design.
Mm.
And yeah, Harris Design.
Ms. Malice, I do see on page 9 of the online application materials packet, I do see a statement for Byron Gonzalez and Anna Carrera to speak.
Yes.
Page
10,
I don't think it's not.
9 and 10. Yeah.
Are you talking about the application? On 10. So page 9 for us is this. Is that different for you?
Signed by 9. Nina.
Okay. All right. That's good.
So I'm sorry, I stepped out. Where are we here?
They've just started.
Oh, okay.
We were just trying to identify who they were.
Okay. Are we allowed to? We're allowed to speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. We're working with the resident, and we were just trying to get the permit. Initially, we were going to apply for the building permit, but then we realized that we had to go through this specific application first. So that's what we decided to. We opted to do the variance first. And we are just hoping that we're able to get approved so that we can move forward with the building application as well.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for this applicant?
I have a question for.
Go ahead.
Question for staff. What is the significance of the 35% width of the stairs in terms of the decision making here? Does that somehow enter into things? If the stairs were narrower, would it be a different decision?
I think you're on a different application. This is for another Fairlington.
Pardon?
This isn't the second Fairlington.
We're still on Fairlington.
We're still on, yes,
Yeah.
There were 2 of them.
Sorry.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the variance V-1993-24-VA-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Motion for passage made by Ms. Clark, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
No.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion passes 3-2.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman?
I would just like to encourage the county board to actually pass the zoning ordinance on Saturday and relieve all the people in Fairlington and anybody else in that particular zoning district of this burden. I appreciate the comments of Ms. Malice, but I also think that putting people through a rejection would have been worse and would probably not have escalated the snail's pace at which we operate when it comes to zoning ordinance amendments. So I hope that, and in addition, I hope that there are no more Fairlington applications in the queue. And if there are, they should be forgiven and refunded their money.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman. Mr. Bowen, can you call the next case, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the next case on the agenda is case number V-11977-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Fitzharris Designs on behalf of Jeffrey LaRocca and Shannon Toole, the owners, to permit a street setback of 19.4 feet to the porch steps instead of 25 feet to the steps as required from 17th Street North, to permit a right side setback of 5.3 feet to the building wall, 2.1 feet to the building eaves, 5.7 feet to the rear porch, 4.3 feet to the rear porch eaves, and 7.3 feet to the front porch instead of 8 feet to the building wall, rear porch, and front porch, 5 feet to the building eave and rear porch eave as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 17.2 feet instead of 18 feet as required, regarding a second-story addition, a renovation to an existing front porch with stairs exceeding 35% of the width of the building elevation, and a rear addition with a porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 3616 17th Street North within the Cherrydale Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and we do not have any additional speakers, nor do we have any supplemental materials for this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Do my colleagues have questions for staff? Ms. Malice, please.
What would be different if the stairs weren't 35% of the frontage?
They could get the encroachment then, where some stairs can be as close as like 5 feet to a property line, but in this case, because it's more than 35%, they don't get the encroachment.
So they
has to-
wouldn't have needed a street setback?
They need to meet the street setback like a building wall would because it's more than 35.
Like a building wall would instead of a porch. Got it.
Can you bring up that picture again so we can?
Do you want a different picture?
The current front.
Okay.
If we have one, yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the applicant with us? Would you like to speak to your application?
Yes, I'm Heidi Fitzharris. I am the architect. I'm Shannon Toole, one of the owners.
Thank you.
And I just want to explain a little bit about the project. So the house was originally built in 1926. And you can see that if you go to the plat, that the property line is angled from the street. So the existing house right now has an existing rear addition that we're actually demolishing, and that's only 2.5 feet off of the existing side property line. So we're removing that and we're improving the setback. So I know it sounds like we're asking to encroach really close to the property line. However, there's an existing garage that we need to stay 8 feet clear. So the total addition at the rear of the existing house is only 22 feet wide. So I think it is a true hardship because there's an existing garage, the property lines are angled. So we did the best to try to maximize the space that we could build within, but we still need to request a special use permit to encroach into that 8-foot setback. A couple of other things, the porch at the front is 7.3 feet right now, but there's some rotting wood, so we're gonna have to rebuild that. So it's existing, but we are fixing / rebuilding it as needed. And then the other thing is the existing roof overhang is at 16 inches already. And it's 1.5 stories, but we're removing the roof and building up to make it a 2-story. So we're matching that existing roof line. So I know it sounds like it's really close, but it's actually not, it's not making the situation any worse than it currently is.
Thank you.
And then also talking about the front steps, if you look at the front elevation, the reason why we have the steps as wide as they are is because they're aligned with the columns of the front porch. So I think that was on A11. So you can see we have a window and a door that we're trying to align with the columns. So it's for aesthetic reasons.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for the applicant?
I have a question which might partly be for staff, but there's this thing about drawing A1, which has, and it's page 16 of 41 of our staff report materials. And it has these alternative amounts, which are designed to allow for sort of mistakes of building. Can you, maybe the applicant can explain what that is, but I have a concern about starting a practice like that, and I'm not clear. I'd like to make sure that when should we approve this, that those alternative amounts are not part of it, that we should be, approving a drawing where we know what the limitations are and they should be respected. So.
Yes, so the surveyor had their dimensions, and when the surveyor stakes out an addition, they're putting pins in for where the foundation is, but then that doesn't account for the building sheathing, the siding, the skirt board, the trim. So all those things increase about 2.5 inches or so. So instead of going back to the surveyor, asking them to increase where their foundation is, because then it would cause construction problems later on. So that takes up 2.5 inches. So that's the note. And then we also just ask for a little bit of extra in case there is a problem, just so we don't have to come back. So that's why if you look at the surveyor's plat versus the architectural site plan, that explains the discrepancy between the two.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Mellis.
Just to amplify that, the numbers in the staff report are the numbers that you're held to, as opposed to the drawings? The numbers in the summary request?
The summary, the first paragraph is correct. That has this tolerance that we've asked for already. So the 5.3 and the 5.7.
Okay. So I guess my question then is, so are those 5.3 and 5.7, are those shown on all of the drawings that are submitted, or is A1 different from the other?
No, so all the architectural ones are coordinated,
Okay.
but if you see the site plan from the surveyor,
Right.
that has, those offsets are larger.
Okay.
Because it's to the foundation line instead of the finishes.
Question for Mr. Bowen. So I've noticed that lately we've been saying, we're increasing something, just for construction errors. Is that a relatively new process?
I wouldn't say it's a relatively new process necessarily. We've certainly seen issues where, people have to return to the BZA for overages of into encroachment of, an inch or so. So, recognizing that those things do come before the BZA and oftentimes, are just very minor encroachments, we do, not necessarily absolutely encourage applicants, but we do inform them that if they are interested in asking for a little more of a, encroachment than they think they might truly need. That could be in their best interest. Not every applicant chooses to do so, but some applicants do. And, it can be a situation that leads to, an easier resolution to construction problems if they do happen, if you've already planned for the possibility of a little bit more of an encroachment than you truly need. But of course, we do our analysis based on what is truly asked for, even if the final building wall might actually be a little bit further from the property line than the case language suggests.
You do your analysis based on not the extra.
Based on the ask versus, which sometimes doesn't exactly match what's shown in the drawings. In this case, the drawing does show what they are asking for.
So I think in this case, the applicant actually, kind of A1 shows what they intended. But, we also have a condition that things are going to be built in accordance to the drawings. So there's a little bit of a conflict if the drawings and the ask are not the same.
In this instance, I don't think there is a conflict. When there is a conflict, or if there's a possibility of a conflict, we do usually include notes in the staff report indicating, that the drawings show one number and, the case language shows another, but the true scope of the request and the way we draft the resolutions would allow for construction in accordance with what is being asked for.
Anything further for this applicant?
Just to finish up, so what we have is a 6-inch difference, essentially, which is 2 inches for finishing and siding, et cetera, and then a couple more inches. And as I understand it, that's how most requests would come in. But you're explaining the reason you have shown that on the architectural drawings is to explain the discrepancy from the survey drawings. Correct. Okay, yes. Thank you. Well, the survey plat doesn't show the amount, or the survey plat shows a slightly different amount because it shows what's existing. It doesn't show what's going to be built. And so the architect has added a couple inches to show what's going to be built. And then she's requested a little tiny bit more and the total of those together is 6 inches. But she put it on a note because she's explaining the difference between the survey plat and the architectural drawings.
So during construction, it is a little complicated because the surveyor is going to go out there and put the brick points for the foundation. So those are different dimensions. So in real world, the foundation dimensions are what matters, right? And then the contractor bills off of that. So
in the real world, siding.
Microphone.
I mean, the wall checks are done with the siding, not to the foundation.
But when the concrete person is going out there, when the surveyor goes out to put out where the foundation's going, that's the first thing that happens.
Right.
And then the concrete person goes out and pours. So they don't know where that siding's going to be.
Right.
So that's why the plat is really showing what the foundation lines are. And that's why I put the architectural plan, just because I wanted to request the finishes and some tolerance.
I understand. I think we generally expect that the plat is going to show the siding dimensions as well, because that's what has come back to us is that, I'm not talking about your case, but that it comes back to us that somebody's, put siding on it. And now they're 2 inches off and they're coming back to us because they didn't put the siding on the drawings. So it's just, I think it's important that, I think the way you did it, we get, but I think in generally we expect that the plat as what is going to be built is going to show the actual finished dimensions. staff have a different view on that?
The way we draft case language is really to allow the maximum possible encroachment or, the closest possible point to the wall. So, depending on the setbacks, there might be an inch or two difference between what is intended to be built and what is actually built. And, we do account for these discrepancies in our case language and in our staff reports when they do exist. But as long as the case language and the resolution is written in such a way that would allow that maximum encroachment, or the minimum possible setback to the face of the building, I don't see that there will be a problem with permitting, which is really the intent of building in the wiggle room to prevent permitting problems down the line.
The standard language that we use is receiving BZA relief shall be constructed in accordance with the proposed footprint shown on the survey and the architectural drawings. And so here there's a conflict between those two, and I think that's what my colleagues are getting at, is that I think we're all just trying to prevent a problem down the line if the measurement comes in between the two.
And I think that I may have stirred up this problem because frequently we don't see a specific reference to the difference. And however, I now kind of have a little bit better understanding that we just have a little bit more information, and usually the request, which is what we see in our summary paragraph, makes it a little bit different. I was concerned about this drawing A1 because it shows this, it talks about showing this additional information, but I think that is correct information, and that actually at one point I was going to try to keep that out, but I think it needs to stay in because it does show where the siding can be, and it shows the final dimensions that are being requested to be approved.
Question. Can you provide any feedback on the resident at 1701 North Nelson and not responding, or?
That is a rental house. It has been a rental house since it was remodeled. Mr. Massoni was our neighbor, and when he passed away, a builder built it and has rented it ever since. And I think it's been sold since he did it just recently. And so we did send letters. In fact, every house across the street from us is a rental house. And we sent certified letters to each of the owners.
Discussion with the board. Or motions. Either way.
I'll make it if you put it up.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said I will make it if you put it on the screen. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11977-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman. Is there a second? A motion for approval made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Good luck with your projects. Mr. Bowen, case number 4.
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case on the agenda is case number V-11978-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Carter Jones on behalf of Gordon and Akiko Cross, the owners, to permit a street setback of 17.3 feet to the building wall, 16.3 feet to the building eave instead of 25 feet to the building wall, 21 feet to the building eave as requested from 27th Street South regarding a front porch, a front addition, a right side street addition, a right side street porch, and a rear porch and landing, AC units, and a left side deck to the existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2700 South Joyce Street within the Arlington Ridge Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. We do not have any additional speakers who have signed up to speak on this case. We did receive a bit of supplemental material, which was 2 disclosure statements, which reached us shortly before 6 p.m. today.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. I believe that our the BZA's assistant reached out to the applicant to get an updated disclosure form because there was a discrepancy on there, and we just wanted, out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to just get that updated. Any questions for staff on this application? Is the applicant with us?
Yes, I am. I don't think my video is working, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, and Gordon Cross, the owner, is also here. That's Carter Jones.
Yeah, I'm Carter Jones. I'm the applicant and architect on the project.
Would you like to speak to, would one of you like to speak to this application?
Yes, I'd like to thank the staff for their help during the review process. We went back and forth on a lot of things, and I think we've been able to clarify what the owners are trying to do. I'd like to thank the Board of Zoning Appeals for considering the application, and I'm here with Gordon Cross to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant? Any discussion or motions? Or silence?
Ready for a motion?
I think so.
I'll just,
Ms. McCroskey.
you know, I just have sort of my usual concern about this one, which just seems that we're just expanding a house. It is a corner lot, but still it seems to be just an expansion, which, you know, is not consistent with the zoning requirements, and therefore I think it's not in compliance necessarily with the policy. So it's a close call for me, but I may vote against this one as a result.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a similar concern about the amount of encroachment that's happening here. So I'll just voice that now.
Hey, the applicant add something to that issue?
Would my colleagues like to hear anything additional?
I'd let them respond to it.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Carter Jones again, the architect. Currently there is a one-story structure on the right side of the house on the south, on the 27th Street south side. We are replacing that with a just marginally larger addition, and that is so we already have a structure there that encroaches into the setback. We're just asking for a little bit more room to make the project work with the interior layout. Everything in the back left corner where it says proposed porch, that's currently a deck, and we're putting a porch in. We're basically putting columns and a roof over the deck. I mean, it may not be built that way, but the footprint is the same. So there's already a structure there. The house is set way back from the Joyce Street side, and so the addition on the front is still, I think, 45 feet or so from the front property line. So the only thing that's encroaching that we're requesting a relief from is the addition on the right side that's replacing a current structure, and everything else on the survey complies with the setbacks by rights, and so we don't have a setback issue there. And we comply with the lot coverage and footprint as well.
Thank you. Ms. Malice?
Is there a reason that you can't remain in the footprint of your existing structure?
That addition is going to be a kitchen, and when you add cabinets, everything starts to get really tight.
It says it's a den. Is that correct?
It's a den it's currently a den. It's going to become a kitchen.
It's going. I'm looking at the IT.
Yeah, and it's the part of the problem with the structure is that it's not insulated. It's it's over outside air. We're putting a crawl space underneath it to make it more comfortable and energy efficient as well.
Is it a one-story addition?
It is. It's going to be just one story like the current room.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That helps me, actually. It is a very small increase in the encroachments, I guess.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Ms. Malice.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11978-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you, Ms. Malice.
Second.
A motion made for approval by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion? I'll just say I plan on voting for approval. I also have a corner lot and realized with the double 25-foot setbacks, it could pose a challenge for some of these houses that have been built pre-ordinance. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Freshman.
between cases, I just wanted to make an observation that I've noticed in the last couple of months driving around for site visits that the posting is on a stake in the front yard of the property, which is extremely helpful to actually locating it in a neighborhood that you're not familiar. There's plenty of postings on all of the surrounding telephone poles and things, but that's not something that I've seen in 13 years until recently. So I find it extremely helpful, and I'm very appreciative of whoever's idea that was.
Thank you. And I too have noticed that as well. That's like a real recent development. Mr. Bowen, case number 5 on the agenda, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. Next case on the agenda is case number V-11979-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Eleanor Galifianakis and Ivan Ramaskol, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 5.2 feet to the closest building wall, 5.1 feet to the building eaves instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the building eaves, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 8.5 feet instead of 18 feet as required, regarding the conversion of addition over an existing nonconforming right side garage, a one-story front addition, a front stoop, a rear porch, a rear window well, AC units, and a two-story rear addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 34 North Fenwick Street within the Lion Park Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. Please note that we do not have any additional speakers signed up to speak on this case, but we do have supplemental material for this case, which includes an email from the owner regarding their neighborhood outreach efforts, as well as an email of support from Sean Riley, the adjacent neighbor to the west.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Questions on this applications for staff? The applicant is approaching. Would you like to speak to your application?
I have another neighbor's support letter that I wanted to bring up. I got it today. Can I give that to Megan? Questions for me, or can I?
You want? Why don't you? We can handle questions afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, we are the homeowner and the designer. We're expanding or adding an addition to the rear of our property. We're taking a small, I don't know if you saw the picture, there's a front little bump out of the entry. We're going to make that a little bit bigger, and that's by right. And then our existing attached garage, that's 2 stories. We would like to convert the garage to a bedroom and make the floor level at the new bedroom in that space be level with the existing first floor, which raises it to match, which then makes the existing bedroom above need to be raised as well, which then consequently makes the roof need to be raised. So the roof over the existing garage there the roof would become higher. So it would still be below the main roof line, but it would, that would become a higher addition on the side. And then I think when you were looking through, the rear addition is going to be 8 feet, 8.9 feet from the side yard setback. So I think the board is considering that side instead of 8 feet to be a 10-foot setback. So that also will need the approval. Otherwise, thought that was by right, but that's fine to be considered as well.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions?
Question?
Ms. Freshman.
Do you by any chance have feedback from your neighbor to the rear, 25
Oh, yeah.
Garfield? I may have missed it, but that was the one neighbor of all the surroundings that I didn't see.
That's okay. Sorry. I had put in an email that she sent me. The two neighbors behind, one was a letter that I did attach, and then the other, I didn't put her address on the PDF, but I've updated that and sent it to the board.
So you do have that from 25, because we frequently get input from neighbors where the entire address is blocked out, so it's completely useless.
Okay.
Unless somebody jots it down before they send it to us. So I just thank you.
Yeah, the homeowners are away. The homeowners rent the house, so the homeowners responded to my email with support, but they never went ahead and signed the letter. So.
Ms. McCroskey.
Yeah, so you heard the discussion on the prior case, but I just want to make sure then and that I've got this right. So on the right side, you have an existing encroachment into the setback where it's 5.5 feet to the eave. And so the new addition that you will put on the back encroaches into the setback less than the existing building.
Yes.
It goes further back, but it doesn't go back into the setback.
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, it seems like we're getting a lot of these requests for a use permit for building over the garage, right? Because for the non-garage part of the house, there is a zoning ordinance that permits non-conforming additions as long as you're going straight up and no further encroachment, which sometimes causes people to come for just eaves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, right, that's the case here, that part of the reason why we're here is because they were building above a non-conforming garage.
Article 16 does prohibit additions over both non-conforming garages and non-conforming porches. So any setbacks that are non-conforming that would be built over in those cases would require a setback modification.
Need a use permit. And so I don't know that I necessarily have a problem in this specific case, but I see that this is going to be a common theme tonight of building over garages. And so I'm having, I'm having some self-conflict on, the number 4, the conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning policies of the county, right? So clearly the county board used their judgment at some point to not allow by right additions over a garage. And so we're being asked to kind of override the county board's judgment and provide a use permit, which they also gave us the authority to do. And that's more of a comment than a question for staff.
Well, I think it's an important comment.
Yeah, and I think to me, one thing that's important about this one is it's not a garage on the side of the house that is creating, it is encroaching less than what the existing house does to the front of it. So
right, I don't disagree with
makes
that.
it easier because I think on others where it's just building over an existing garage, I think I have more concern about that rule and what is the zoning policy as a result of that rule.
And in this case, and I might prove my ignorance on this case, but I believe that this garage is still going to be a garage and we're just building over it.
No, it's an existing garage that we're converting to a bedroom.
Okay.
And then the existing bedroom above it would need to be raised
Understood.
to match.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
Just to clarify with staff, if this garage had been conforming, could it have been built over by right?
So if like the existing garage had, per se, had like a 10-foot side setback and a 25-foot
if
street
it has
setback.
setback of not a garage, but of a main building.
Yeah, as long as the setbacks were conforming and the addition was supposed to be within the height limit, I would not expect there to be a need for any BZA action then.
Because a garage can be built 1 foot from the property line.
A detached garage.
Detached garage.
Yeah.
For a detached garage, can you build over by right?
That's an interesting question. I think it would really depend on the specifics of the property and the proposal. It might be possible.
What
In
would
the
the
height.
zoning allow?
Yeah, so long as let's say you had talking in hypotheticals is difficult with zoning because the regulations are very specific. But let's say you had a one, or Meg, did you want to chime
Steven
in?
has his hand up.
Oh,
Okay.
Stephen might want to chime in as well.
I was about to say Ms. Ryan has her hand up. Circular here.
I will throw this question to Stephen and I might elaborate afterwards if he wants to speak first.
Mr. Rissy?
Yes, as Blake said, it's best not to talk in hypotheticals, but I think we can say that the regulations that allow for a detached garage to receive a 1 foot side and rear setback for interior lots only are only applicable to garages that are 1 and 1.5 stories tall. Anything taller than 1.5 stories doesn't get those setbacks, so you couldn't build a full second story over a conforming 1-story garage because that garage would not have the right setback. Does that answer your question, Ms. Malice?
I think so. If the garage is conforming to garage setbacks, they could go up a 1/2 story by right?
Yes, that would still be a conforming garage.
Okay, but they couldn't go up a full story by right.
Correct.
Thank you. Nice to have you here.
I'm formulating a question, so if someone else wants to jump in or give me a second here. Mr. Bowen, if we approve this use permit and this garage is now converted to just house footprint, for lack of a better term, does that then provide the exemption if this homeowner wants to go a 3rd story in the future over the garage, right? So like, what are we approving tonight if we approve this?
Can I add to that, Blake?
Meg, I'm happy for
Okay.
you to add to that.
So typically with the conditions, it's going to be based on the approval that you approve tonight. So it would be the plans and everything. So if they were trying to go taller than they were requesting here, a lot of times they'd have to go back based on the conditions in the resolution.
And staff is confident that they would catch that in the future?
I would hope so.
So just to that point though, sometimes we like approve a porch, but we have a specific condition
Not be
to
built
be
over.
built over. Is
that one here?
Is that a reason that we call that one out differently sometimes?
Just like right here, I have on the screen, it says that the first condition here and what staff is proposing, that the applicant agrees that the proposed addition shall be constructed in accordance with the footprint shown on the survey and the architectural drawing. So if they're trying to deviate from that, that might force them to come back to the BZA depending on what they're doing.
Thank you.
So I tend to support this one, but I would suggest altering the number 1 condition that this just may not be built over, like we would kind of just do with a porch, because I just worry that a future owner might try and get that keep going up, and I'm not sure I would approve a 3rd level on top of this non-conforming garage.
I would say that maybe since that's our standard language about constructing in accordance with the footprint and the architectural drawings, we don't want to alter that language in this case and suggest that it doesn't mean that in other cases. So I would recommend that we keep it as is.
It's like, but porch language has that on there, right?
Right. Well, when you have a specific edition of just a porch, I think they put that on specifically. But for most projects, you're bound by the architectural drawings that have been approved. And I think we ought to probably keep that because that's part of being bound by those architectural drawings. And I think it might be good to keep it consistent.
And I guess that's a question for staff is does staff feel that the the height requirements in the architectural drawings are what that condition binds the applicant to?
Yes. I would say sometimes we do include the language about porches that you mentioned. In part, these conditions are to make it clear to the applicants as well what they are being, just to clarify what the scope of the approval is and what can and cannot be done.
Is there a particular reason why why staff recommends that language in porches but not in other second-story additions?
Sometimes I would say porches, there are aspects of them, perhaps their side setbacks are conforming while their, maybe front setback isn't. And technically a porch is a detached, or not a detached, but it's an accessory structure to the home, whereas this is part of the main building footprint. I think we are differentiating between the accessory structures and the main building.
Okay.
I think that's a good explanation. That's a good reason.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Ms.
make a
Mallett.
motion.
Please.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-11979-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? We'll call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, can you please call the next case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. Next case on the agenda is case number V-11980-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Robert Burns on behalf of Michael Kunkler and Suzanne Sullivan, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 4.8 feet to the building wall, 4.3 feet to the building eave, instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the building eave as required regarding a second-story addition over an encroaching garage to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 3111 4th Street North within the Lion Park Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. We do not have any additional speakers who have signed up to speak on this case, nor do we have any supplemental materials.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for staff? Ms. Malice? I jumped the gun.
Just a nit. The application said it was an application for a variance. You don't require them to correct that like you do when somebody files an appeal and what they really wanted was a variance.
No, in Acela or permit Arlington, variances and use permits, the applications are identical, but whereas the appeal application is entirely separate. And technically, a use permit is a form of a variance, a subset of a variance, so we do not require that to be corrected.
Would you like to speak to your application?
Yeah, I'm Rob Burns, the applicant and the architect. This is the owner, Michael Kunkel. We have an existing attached garage attached by a breezeway to the house. It predates the zoning ordinance, so that's when it became non-conforming, I guess. It seemed like the least disruptive approach to adding an office space was to go above the existing garage, which is non-conforming, rather than elsewhere on the site. The site is big enough. We could have done it within zoning requirements, but this seemed like the logical solution. Glad to take any questions if I can.
I was just going to add with supplemental materials, there were approvals and signatures from 5 of the surrounding neighbors. Neighbor to the east was unavailable. She is 96 years young and is not living independently anymore. And the neighbor to the rear, oh, absolutely. And the neighbor to the rear.
Raise the platform, the whole platform. There's on the top. There you go.
That good? And the neighbor to the rear, which is the largest house in Arlington, I believe, has been vacant since 2019.
Did you indicate there was supplemental material?
Yes, it's in the online submission as well, at least when I checked it earlier today.
Yeah, and I'll clarify from our standpoint, that wasn't supplemental and that it was submitted in time to be included in the application materials. It may have come in later than the rest of the application, but it did not come in after our finalization deadline.
Anything further for this applicant or discussion with the board?
What's the dimension of between the garage and the house? Do we know offhand?
It is attached by a breezeway. It perhaps 4 feet wide, 5 feet wide.
It is 4 feet.
Okay, thanks.
And the existing garage is just by a very rough measurement is something a little bit over 260 square feet. Is that right? It has just, I'm looking at the
Feet for the current garage.
survey and it has 26 by 10. So I'm getting,
Yes.
and it has a little bit more on each of those tenths and all, but
Yes, ma'am.
okay. So, yeah.
260.
So this is a non-conforming garage,
This is a non.
and we're building a
Same
full
issue.
story over it. How does staff support that? I mean, that doesn't comply with the zoning ordinance, right? If that's why you're,
Meg, I would be happy to throw that question to you since you wrote the staff report, unless you want me to take a stab at it first.
Yeah, pretty much like before for the last case in Article 16, it prevents non-conforming garages and porches to be built above. So that's why they're here. They're wanting to build above that existing first floor building wall, which happens to be a garage.
This,
Stephen
and-
has his hand up, sorry.
I would say this is probably a conforming garage because it's detached. It's 260 square feet, right?
Not detached.
It's attached with the
considered-
breezeway.
Breezeway.
Breezeway counts as attached.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Okay, so it is non-conforming.
If that breezeway were not existing, it would,
Mhm.
I think you would be
Gotcha.
right.
Gotcha,
Is that
okay.
true?
Yes, but you still couldn't add a full story over.
Right, so it still would, we would, because we're half a story over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
is it,
Okay.
Mr. Bowen, is the separation of 4 feet adequate for a garage?
In this situation, it's not considered detached, so there is no separation requirement between the buildings. Really,
Because of the
that's
breezeway?
the breezeway is included as part of the main building footprint.
But if it had been standalone, it's too close to the house.
If it was standalone, I believe we would want to see, let's see, an 8-foot separation requirement. And I'm not sure if Steven still has his hand up. Meg, can you confirm? He might wish to speak as well.
It looked like he took it down.
Okay.
I guess I'll speak first. I'm not sure I can support this. I'm trying to think this through, but just building over garages is a little problematic. It's not that I don't like the design, but I'm not sure that is really in the spirit of things.
I will just say I have a concern partly because this is just making 2 stories, blocking up the entire side yard. And the other side is less than conforming as well, so.
Well, that our neighbors on that side, David Andelman and Karen Methlier, did support the application
They support on
the side where the garage
garage
is.
side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I will also add that the decision to build above the garage was taken in lieu of expanding to another facility or another building on the property to remain as best we can within the residential character of the neighborhood.
But in this case, you did have other options in terms of adding to your home that could have been by right.
I believe so, ma'am. We have a very small footprint of a house, and this would only go up above the current footprint.
Anything else from my colleagues? Someone like to try a motion?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11980-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? I will save the suspense. I will support this one. I think that I do, as we know from the discussion we just had, I do have concerns about these building over the garage being in conflict with the zoning related policies. But in this is one that I would be willing to support because there aren't a whole lot of options, and the right side encroachment is pretty minimal as it is. That being said, is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
No.
Ms. Freshman? Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bowen, I believe we have another case on the agenda.
We do. We have a few more. The next case on the agenda is case number V-11981-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Fitzharris Designs on behalf of Jonathan Hoscode and Lindsay Fischetti, the owners, to permit a street setback of 21 feet to the building wall, 20 feet to the building eave instead of 25 feet to the building wall, 21 feet to the building eave as required, and to permit a street setback of 18.5 feet to the front porch, 17.5 feet to the front porch eave instead of 21 feet to the front porch, 19.5 feet to the front porch eave as required regarding a new right side addition and front porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 960 North Madison Street within the Dominion Hill Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. We do not have any additional speakers for this case, nor do we have any supplemental materials for this case at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Do we have any questions for staff? Mr. Bowen, I see one plat. That's the proposed plat. We don't have an existing plat, do we?
I will throw that question to Meg if she does not mind, as she
Sorry,
was the one who assessed this project.
I apologize. I find it very helpful when we get both plats, an existing certified plat and then the current project.
I believe we do have site plans for this project in addition to the plats, but in terms of having plats with a seal, I believe we just have the one. Is that correct, Meg?
Be the one proposed
Okay.
plat.
I can manage, but I just wanted to ask. Would you like to speak to your application?
Well, if you look at A1, you'll see the existing.
Yes, thank you. Would you like to speak to your application?
Oh, yes. I'm Heidi Fitzharris. I'm the architect.
Jonathan Hoscode, a homeowner.
And so on this site, they have a true hardship because they have a 5-foot sanitary sewer easement that runs basically 2/3 of the way, 2/3 the depth through their existing site, and they cannot build on top of that. So it really limits on where they can build. So the existing house right now is at 24 feet 8.5 inches off the, so it's already, the existing house already encroaches into the 25-foot setback at the front. So what we are proposing to do is a side addition that is going to encroach a little bit farther into the front setback. So we're asking for a 21-foot setback instead to the front of the new addition at the side. And then we're also proposing to build a new front porch in front of the existing house. And that will also, we're asking that to be able to encroach 18.5 feet. And then the side setbacks in the rear are all in compliance. But because we're doing a rather large side addition, because the house, we can't build to the rear of the house. Therefore, we really needed to play with the depth of the addition at the front. And then also that's why we're asking for that porch too, just so it gives some interest from the street.
Thank you. Questions from my colleagues?
Yeah, so yeah, that was the thing that concerned me was, actually encroaching further than you actually had to. Can you talk a little bit more about why you felt like you needed to encroach more?
Right. So we actually can't build any farther to the rear. So there is the 5-foot sanitary sewer easement, but
I understand the easement, but you could have made that addition smaller.
well, we're trying to put a kitchen in there and then also the family room.
And you could build a little bit further, but you're choosing not to because of the deck.
Yeah, you're
right.
not-
You could build over the deck.
Sorry?
You could build over the rear deck, right? So that it's not
Um,
entirely, you could go a little, you could go, 10 feet further or so.
So actually,
you would
we
have to give
can't-
up the
so
deck.
The county, it's a little tricky because the county says there's just a 5-foot sanitary sewer easement, but yet then they also have stipulations that you actually have to keep your footing, 8.5 feet away from the center line of that pipe. So the easement's one thing, but then they actually have, the county actually takes more of your land.
So it's another 3 or 4 feet, right? Okay. That's helpful. To me, at least. I'm sorry if I sidetrack that. If you, I don't know. You're not done. Okay.
I'm just gonna find the floor plans.
Yes, that's what I'm staring at.
Also the neighbor, I don't have the
Dimensions.
dimensions.
Oh, dimensions, I don't know. The neighbor next door?
Right, so if you're looking at the house to the right, they did an addition that also encroaches the front. You can see it right up there.
964.
And I think they came before the BZA.
Which is not on our
Which house are you referring to?
964,
964?
but that's not on our,
No, it's not on
setback
our,
list.
our setback list. Because we don't have anything on your, we don't have anything on your street encroaching.
I think she said they had previously, the neighbor next door had previously done it, and it looks like from the tax map, you can see an addition that encroaches on the left.
I'm just saying it's not on the table. Anyway.
I have similar concerns to Ms. Malice, but I'll mention one other thing, that this is not the only case where this has comes up all the time, in that the county ordinances throughout the zoning districts allow porches to encroach 4 feet into the front setback. And everybody wants a 6-foot porch, and I understand that. It's a nicer porch. But I have one of our standards is being in compliance with zoning policies, and seems to me that's a zoning policy, and we're asking here, you're asking, and as I say, this comes up all the time. I completely understand why, but you're asking to have a 6-foot porch to encroach further into the front setback. And I always have a concern about that, because it seems to me the zoning policy is a 4-foot front porch to extend into an encroachment.
And Mr. Bowen, I assume that there's no way to know what 964, if that came before the BZA, you would have a way of figuring that out, right?
I do have a way of figuring that out. It did
You
come to the
did.
BZA in 1999. The reason it is not in your table is because they sought a 2-foot setback reduction. So this it was a 23-foot setback instead of 25 foot is required. So it was greater than the request, or the setback is greater. So we would only provide setbacks that are equal to or less than typically in our tables.
And we're here just to state the obvious. We're here for the front porch, right? The side is by right.
The front wall of the addition and the front porch.
Both.
Right.
Both.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. But the
side.
The side.
Is by
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's easier for you to make a case on the side addition than it is on the encroaching front porch.
The problem. So the problem. The problem I have on this one is that most of these comparables are not really in the vicinity of your project.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman.
I understand the concern about the front porch, but a front porch that's less than 6 feet is useless. It's a stoop. So if we're going to support porches, I was here long enough to remember when Charles was on the board and he always supported front porches. I just feel as if when you're taking a house that was built before the zoning ordinance, as much of Arlington is and as many of our cases are, you have to be a little bit flexible. And in this particular case, I'm persuaded that it's not an unreasonable request given the constraints in the rear of the property.
Arlington does like their porches.
Well, then Arlington should change the zoning ordinance. And so that people don't have to come to us to get a 6-foot porch. You know, I don't know why they don't. And it may be that we approve so many of them that there's no reason to. Yeah, so I'm a little more sympathetic towards the encroachment in the addition. You can theoretically make the island smaller. Maybe there's a little less room between the kitchen and the family room, but there is a problem in the back. But both things together are a little difficult. Especially since, there's no comparables or even close.
So I'll also say, just looking at the aerials, I was trying to figure out the sewer easement. And as it runs along the block, I think the easement continues along, but the other houses have built behind their house. So I don't know how they did that, but I guess the reason why I'm bringing that up is the other houses have continued to build behind where that easement is, but we can't. Does that make sense?
Do you have an idea of why they could and you can't?
I'm guessing that things just kind of slip through. Like, actually, even this existing deck that's here, that's actually too close, I think.
I don't know if it was built with the building permit.
I don't know. Yeah. But like, if you look at the aerial or the parcel map, if you continue to go to the north, if I recall, there's like even that house continuing up, the one after the
954.
Yeah.
954.
Thank you. Yeah, but you can see there's an addition in behind, but I think that easement runs that entire way.
What is my colleague's pleasure here? Someone want to try? Ms. Freshman?
Put it up. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-11981-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark for approval. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
No.
Did I miss some?
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Ms. Freshman? Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
All that suspense. Surprised even me. Mr. Bowen, can you call the next case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the next case on the agenda is case number V-11982-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Ahmad Qureshi on behalf of Robert and Christine Bamberger, the owners, to permit a street setback of 8.6 feet to the building wall, 8 feet to the building eave instead of 25 feet to the addition wall, 2 feet to the 21 feet to the building eave as required from North Hudson Street regarding a second-story addition on top of an existing non-conforming porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 3187 Key Boulevard within the Lyon Village Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. While we do not have any additional speakers for this case, we do have a piece of supplemental material that was submitted, and that is an email and letter from the owner regarding their neighborhood outreach efforts.
Figure out which addresses were furnished later in the supplemental. Yeah, I have not had a chance, so.
I'm still missing one, 1600.
So, question for staff on this one. I assume that the area of the corner that's not part of their property belongs to the county? That's county right away?
Yeah, that's what it looked like. It appeared to be by the GIS map.
Okay, and so we're measuring right of way from where?
It would be the property line that fronts that street, even though there's that big gap here.
From there to the curb?
From the line of the property.
Okay. Oh, from that. That's the property line, right?
Yep.
And so the right of way is being measured.
We're measuring that property line that kind of fronts that.
To that point, to the very end of the corner? Like from here to where? Oh, you're measuring.
The setbacks measured from the property line.
Okay. You're talking, that's setback to the property line.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in this case, the parcel boundary is inset quite a bit from the physical edge of the street, but of course, we measure our street setback from where the street easement runs.
Got it. That's really far away.
From our applicant.
For the applicant. See, it's a corner lot. Street, Jackson Street. It's a corner lot. They're proposing a second-story addition of the existing screen porch. So the addition, you get no closer to the property line. So that notices need to.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant?
So the porch stays or goes? The existing
I
porch.
can't hear you.
The existing porch, does it stay or go?
Is it what?
Does it stay?
Yes. And the addition will go sit right on top of it.
But it will continue to be a porch.
Yes. Screen porch. I think the conditions say that it can't be enclosed or.
Ms. McCrusker.
Okay, so I'll just, for discussion purposes, this is where we have all this building over porches, et cetera. And this is, but in this instance, we look at, zoning ordinance as I look at the zoning ordinance as this defining a lot of the policies. But what we have here is a very constrained corner lot, and those measurements, which staff correctly does for the setbacks, but they don't go to the street. It doesn't, we still have a good amount of open space on that side. And I do think because it's such a constrained lot that I would tend to support this as building above the screened porch in this case, even though that's something that we recognize there's a zoning ordinance provision that would prohibit that as a by right ordinance, and that is the policies. But I think this is a special situation. So that's my view of it.
Thank you. And I'll just add on to that this is kind of a unique situation with that extra sliver on the side. And when, for the compatibility with the neighborhood, although, no one can see that property line, it would tend to still fit into that character because no one knows that that's not the property line. If there was another house there, then I think this might be a different case.
I'm just going to suggest that we all make sure please, if you can't hear us, please wave or something so that we know to get closer to the microphones. Okay. So I think, Rick, you're sitting back too when you're talking.
Thank you. So, any motions or further comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
I will make a motion. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11982-24-UP subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. McCrusker. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark. Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes for approval 5-0. Mr. Bowen, next case, please.
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case on the agenda is case number V-11983-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by 5307 20th Street LLC, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 7.1 feet to the building wall instead of 8 feet to the building wall as required, and to permit a right side setback of 3.9 feet to the window well instead of 5 feet to the window well as required, regarding an after-the-fact approval for a new one-family detached dwelling currently under construction in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5307 20th Street North within the Terra Leeway Heights Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. We do not have any additional speakers who have signed up to speak on this case, but we do have a piece of supplemental material, which is a letter of support from Darren Withers, the adjacent neighbor to the east.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Can you bring up the as-is picture, the front?
Meg, will you please bring up that picture?
Sorry. So my question for staff is that my understanding is that when the foundation is poured, that there should be a wall check right after the foundation is poured. So how are we a foot off and now the whole house is built? And you might not be able to answer that, but
I will say that I was not working at the time this application was submitted, so I'm not personally able to answer that question. Meg may be able to answer that question, but it's also possible that much of this project was intended to be by right, and much of the permitting activity preceded our involvement, so we may not know, but I will refer to Meg.
So that's probably a question for the wrong department, but I'm a little troubled that we're not here months prior in this process.
Understood.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? This is John Liu.
Oh, Ms. Ryan, did you have anything to add to that before?
I don't know the full history. I just know that the zoning plan review told me that it didn't meet the wall check, so that's why it's for it.
Ms. Smells?
So the staff report seemed to suggest that the building permit had not been finalized. Do you know, that language was puzzling. Did this have a building permit?
Yes, it has an approved building permit, but they can't like close out and get a final
They can't close it out.
because of the wall check showed it was closer than they're allowed.
And was this originally by right?
I believe so, yeah. I think it was all intended.
Okay.
Yeah, if the wall had been 8 feet, that would have been by right in accordance with the side setback allowances. And window well, similar at 5 feet, would have been compliant with the encroachment allowances for window wells.
Thank you.
I think I want to check something else. Had a note about the disclosure statement. I'm a little confused about the disclosure statement because the disclosure statement says that Mr. Liu is the owner, but our application says that it's an LLC. So could we clarify what the relationship between Mr. Liu and the LLC is?
Yes, this is John Liu. I'm the owner of the LLC.
Okay.
That probably needs to be on the disclosure statement.
Yeah, and I look at the disclosure statement and there's a signature there, but the to wit line, which would normally have the like printed name of the person signing, is blank. So is that Mr. Liu signing that?
I'm not. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't recall that. I mean, what we have all these notarized in UPS, and the witness was there when I signed it.
No, to wit is, I think, would be the person signing, the name of the person signing it.
Yeah, this should be me. All the documents should be signed by me. I'm sorry if I missed.
Should be signed by you.
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
the notary missed that line.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, typically they write out the name of the actual person that they're
on
witnessing.
on the to wit to.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no idea what happened there. But I should be the one signing for all documents related to this, the construction in this house.
Got it.
Mr. Bowen, I was involved in some discussions with our BZA assistant on the disclosure form, and I think that there's some confusion on the form that is causing applicants confusion because at the bottom of the form it says applicant signature, but the applicant is not always the owner. And the disclosure form, I think, is supposed to cover the ownership of the property. And I think that like that was, not to go back to another case, but in item number 4, that had caused some confusion with the applicant, and I think it's causing us confusion now. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, yeah, and be happy to talk, further about that issue at a later date.
Yeah, because, in the past, it was almost always the owner. With the new system, we allow the applicant to be the main person, which could be the architect or the builder, rather than, and I think we did run into a problem here with an owner not signing, but the agent signing.
Yeah, and oftentimes we also have, an owner consent statement where the property owner gives an agent permission to file the application on their behalf. And the way the disclosure form is currently drafted would allow that agent to sign, but we're open to the possibility of amending our forms.
And I think part of the confusion we had in the last one is that the date on the agent form post dated the date on the disclosure statement. So when they gave the approval to be an agent, this form had already been signed by the agent. So they didn't technically have that authority, and hence why we got another form signed.
Understood.
Right. So there's a couple, complexities there. But in this case, there probably should be the LLC. There's an ownership interest of the LLC that should probably be on this form, but I couldn't tell you what the effect of that would be on us now.
Yeah, is the LLC the owner?
The LLC is the owner of the property, yes.
So I don't know if that precludes us from making a decision tonight or not, but.
We don't have our old land lawyer here that knew the answer to that.
Right. So, I mean, I guess ultimately that decision is ours, so.
And Mr. Copeland, if I may, I will say in the past that there have been times where the BZA has predicated an approval on the resubmission of an updated disclosure statement. So you do always have the possibility of adding a condition, as has been done in the past.
But there, there's a not to harp on this, and I don't know that it affects my decision at the moment, but there is they have to be posted and advertised with this form, and so I'm not sure what the equities are there. I'm sorry, where are we? We're here from the applicant. Thank you. Is the applicant with us? He is. We heard from him. Yes.
Yep.
Would you like to speak to your application?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Would you like to speak to your application? Do you have anything further to say?
Oh, yes, please. I just want to give a little bit of background on this case. It's a construction error. So what happens is that this is in fact was found during the wall check, and then we have been going through the process for many months, if you will. And if you look at this site plan, what had happened was that we had to switch site engineer mid-build. So when they come to stake out, they staked out at the back corner. Now, the shape of the lot lines are not parallel. So they went off of the reference of the wrong line. So the entire house is just twisted a little bit, if you will, towards the right side. Therefore, the 7.1 feet of setback instead of the 8 feet. Now, that resulted in 8.3 feet on the left-hand side, which is bigger than what it was designed to, right? So the whole house was rotated a little bit, and that right there, after we did a wall check, so we started a process, and during the process, and then we spoke with all the neighbors and then received support. So we sent 7 letters to the surrounding neighbors, received support from 5, and did not hear back from 2. So the 7 we sent are 5311, which is on the left to this property, 2000 Briar in 2004, and across the street 5312, 5308, 5304. So all these folks, except for 5312, give us written approval, and the one behind us, 2011, is a rental home. We sent a certified letter to the record, but we did not hear back.
Thank you. At what point was the wall check plat submitted? At what stage of construction?
So we finished for framing the first deck, and then we started. And then that's when we get the first floor height, and then we conducted the wall check and we submitted.
What was the date of that?
Let me see.
Like when I did my addition, in order to get any other permitting approval, we had to submit a wall check plat before any other inspections could take place. So I'm just puzzled why the entire house has been built and this wasn't caught and come to us a lot sooner. But that's probably a larger discussion for another day.
Yes, sir. I mean, we
Joyce Street.
We submitted all the requests and it's through a system. I completely agree. But we've been spending time getting the letters from the neighbors and then thinking through what are options. Mm-hmm.
So, but it sounds like you were notified that there was a problem with the wall check some time ago.
Right, and then we tried to get on this.
You have a
meeting.
date of when that was? Just trying to get the chronology.
would you mind, give me 1 second, let me look at my,
Sure.
my record. So we conduct the wall check on May 6th. Let me see. I also have my engineer on the line. Yogi, do you remember when we submit the initial wall check? I don't know if Yogi, if you're on.
Yeah, hi. My name is Yogendra Mahajan. I'm with Global Engineering, and we did the wall check for this property. The wall check was done on April 17th, and we received feedback comments on the 8th of May.
The 5th of May?
8th.
8th of May. And at that point, there was just the foundation?
No, the first deck has been built.
First deck, okay.
Mm-hmm. At the time, you know, our thought is that push comes to shove, like we just unbuild all the extra stuff and then cut the window. I mean, the worst case scenario, just to keep it going. But we do ask for your understanding of the mistake that we made. And the neighbors are supporting this changes.
So this question for staff, and maybe you don't know, but if it doesn't meet the wall check, is it presumed that construction stops?
That would typically be more of so a decision for ISD, who is the administrator of the building permit process, and there might be a variety of variables in play there. So I don't think we can fully answer that question.
I think it's the second one of these we've had recently.
Yeah, I plan on supporting this one. It's a pretty minimal 1 foot, but I think that's a discussion maybe we continue at some point in a work session or offline.
Mr. Chairman, I can make a
Ms.
motion.
Alice, please.
Could I make a, just
Please.
make it
Sorry.
quick? I'm going to just give you my thinking on this, which
Yep.
is, yeah, these things happen and it's really maddening, but they always do seem to happen. I'm not sure we can ever prevent it, but I will tell you what makes the difference for me in this one is that the motion binds them to the survey, and we haven't reduced the aggregate side yard setbacks. So the total still has to add up, and the survey shows the greater amounts on the left-hand side. Maybe it's the right setback as looking
Yes.
at the house, but anyway, you have the greater amounts on the other side to offset the slightly smaller amounts on this side that we're approving the relief for. So because of that, I'm going to be willing to support this, even though I don't like doing it.
Thank you. Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11983-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
The motion made for approval by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. McCroskey. I will call the roll if there's no further discussion. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0 for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Ms.
you.
Freshman.
I would like to disclose that I have an acquaintanceship with Ms. Bell, who is one of the applicants on the next case. However, I feel that I'm able to consider the application objectively.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman.
I'm making
Ms. Malice.
I'm making a similar disclosure that I am acquainted with Ms. Bell, but I plan to consider this application in an objective manner.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Ms. McCroskey.
We all know.
Piling on, I will make a similar disclosure. I think under the requirements of the Conflicts of Interest Act, it doesn't require, just a friendship doesn't require disclosure, but I think it's better to do it than not. And I also think that I can consider this fairly and impartially.
And just for the record, that would mean we wouldn't have a quorum. So we kind of have to be able to do this fairly. Are there questions? Oh, please call the case. Sorry.
Happy to do so. The next case on the agenda is case number V-11984-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Kenneth and Susan Bell, the owners, to permit a a side setback of 3.1 feet to the accessory building wall, 2 feet to the accessory building eave, instead of 8 feet to the accessory building wall, 5 feet to the accessory building eave as is required, to permit a rear setback of 6.5 feet to the accessory building porch, 5.5 feet to the accessory building porch eave instead of 10 feet to the accessory building porch, 6 feet to the accessory building porch eave as required, regarding a detached accessory building, garage, and sewing studio that exceeds a footprint that exceeds 560 square foot footprint to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 102 North Fillmore Street within the Lion Park Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. Please note that we do not have any supplemental materials for this case, but we do have one additional speaker, James Karcher, who is signed up to speak on this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Do my colleagues have questions for staff? Applicant, would you like to speak to your application?
Sure. Just a few things. Good evening. My husband and I bought this house in 2001. It is a 1926 Sears plan bungalow with the detached garage. At the time that we bought it, the garage encroached on both the side and the rear lot line. So we knew that we had encroachments from the get-go. When we found out that the lot to our rear, actually it's the side lot line from a zoning perspective, was going to be developed with a house, we had to alter the back of the garage. So it is, we thought, 1 foot. I believe staff said it's 0.8 feet. In any case, we now have a remaining encroachment where the garage eave is actually over the property line with 2900 First. We propose to replace this existing garage in its entirety and replace it with a detached 1 1/2 story 2-car garage with the studio above. We've designed the garage to mimic many of the details of our house, which, as I mentioned, is an arts and crafts building. We have similar shingles, we have fly rafters, the brick piers that are on the front of the house, which are a little bit obscured right now with the shrubbery, and then the cloud lift that's over the front door. All of those details will be in the new garage. So we are trying very hard to make this design compatible with the materials, with the elements, and with the arts and crafts aesthetic. In permitting, we understood that we had several zoning issues, and there are 3. The side and rear eaves of the building encroach into the required setbacks. The studio, which has exterior stairs, has an entry porch. We thought it was just a landing, but because it is roofed over and has posts, it meets the definition of porch, and that encroaches into the rear yard. And then the county's calculation of the footprint took us over the 560 by 18 square feet. And although it's considerably smaller than some of the examples that are in the staff report, it is over that 560, and that triggers an 8-foot side yard setback. We did take our drawings around to our neighbors, neighbors whose property lines touched ours across the street. We contacted the Civic Association, and we also contacted Arlington Public Schools, which owns the property across the street from us. We received either no objection or support from everyone, and our most affected neighbor, Mr. Karcher, is here to speak shortly. We believe that we have put together a design that is compatible, that takes the features that are most appropriate for an arts and crafts building and put them into this structure. We don't believe it will affect negatively any of our neighbors. In fact, by removing the encroachment with 2900, we're curing a long-standing encroachment that dates back almost 100 years. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. McCroskey.
It's 1.5 stories because the sewing room above is not a full story.
Not a
because
full
it's only
story.
part of it.
The knee wall is under 24 inches.
Okay. And as I look at this, it seems that there's, in essence, at the end of your project, there are fewer encroachments into the yards than you have today.
We're definitely improving the situation because of the setback from the property lines. Yes, it's moving the building further from both the side and the rear.
And it's bigger, but it's moved over into the
Correct.
lot more.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
So it seems that you're here because the garage is slightly too big.
Slightly too big.
And slightly too close.
Slightly too close. The eaves are an issue, both side and
so is there a reason that we can't make the garage a little bit smaller and just move it over so that you can do this by right?
Well, there's a couple things. We did try that. We discussed it, and there's a couple of issues. We have to maintain 8 feet between the buildings. We had understood until today that we needed to keep 15 feet. That was a notation on our plan review. So working with a 15-foot separation between main building and the wall of the garage or the eave, as sort of matter of fact, we felt we had to have a greater distance than we do. If we make the building much smaller, we lose a lot of functionality inside.
How much? We're talking like 15 square feet?
Oh, it would be more than 50 that we would lose because inside the garage, we also have a gardening shed. It's part of it. It's not apparent from this site plan, but there will be a considerable storage. And then we'd like to be able to store 2 modern cars in there.
And I'm sorry, but why is it an 8-foot separation? If it's over 560 square feet, doesn't that call?
It's maybe staff wants to answer, but my understanding is that because it's 1.5 stories as opposed to 2, it's entitled to the 8 foot as opposed to the 15.
Okay.
Correct. Article 3, which defines these, accessory building standards, I would say that reasonable people within the zoning division interpreted the regulations differently. Okay. So ultimately, it's up to the zoning administrator and, the zoning plan review supervisor. And they interpreted that regulation to the 15-foot separation requirement only applies to 2-story accessory buildings and not to 1.5-story accessory buildings with larger footprints than 560.
So would you consider just moving it a little bit so that you don't have any encroachments?
I don't think we could actually make that work because of the existing porch that's there. If we had to pull the building forward and to the west, or to the left, looking at the graphic, it would really close down the distance between the two. We have existing trees there as well that would be affected by it. We've done pretty extensive drainage work in the back, and if we moved it, we would actually be moving it into the water flow from the property to the rear.
Anything further? Oh, we do have a speaker. Thank you, Ms. Frischman. Let's hear from the speaker. Mr. Karcher.
Good evening. I'm James Karcher. My wife and I own the property at 2900 First Road North. We're directly adjacent to the Bell's property. Their northern property boundary is our southern property boundary. In 1998, when my wife and I bought our property, there was already an existing garage. There was no setbacks from our property line. And indeed, there was an encroachment, I think, of 0.8 of a foot with the eaves of that garage over our property line. The structure that is proposed replaces that existing garage. Even with the requested relief, the proposed structure will be a substantial improvement, I believe, to the status quo. The new building will be farther back from our property line, and the encroachment will be solved. Therefore, I think it will be a much more attractive structure. It will be a better vista for us. It will be an improvement for the neighborhood. So therefore, we recommend, my wife and I recommend that we approve this request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion. Ms. Freshman.
Motion?
Please.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11984-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. McCroskey for approval. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, can we call the next case, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. Next case on the agenda is case number V-11985-24-VA-1. This is a variance request by Lance and Jamie Hill Smith, the owners, to permit the construction of a new one-family detached dwelling on a property which has insufficient lot width and area for one-family development in the R27 zoning district, regarding a new one-family detached dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 846 North Burlington Street within the Bluemont Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance request with conditions. We do not have any additional speakers who have signed up to speak on this case, but we do have a piece of supplemental material which came in, which is an email from the owner regarding their neighborhood outreach efforts.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last sentence there.
I said there was a piece of supplemental material, which was an email from the property owners describing their neighborhood outreach efforts.
Any questions on this application for staff?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. When I looked at the plat, it was drawn in such a way as to imply that it was attached. When I went to the site was empty. So I just want to clarify that there must have been attachments at some point, because even the tax map shows 844 and 846, which I apparently don't exist, since when I was there was nothing but a vacant lot. So I'm just clarifying that the most recent information is that it's a vacant lot, and they're proposing to build a very narrow, detached, standalone on a narrow lot, and there's nothing next to it.
I can speak to all of this.
Lot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And before we hear from the applicant, I think one other thing that I saw in there is that the history of this property was not that it was used as a single family detached dwelling unit. It was always used as half of an attached dwelling unit.
But the zoning permits a detached dwelling, which is why they can do it now.
Well,
Ms. Malice.
If you want to talk to that point, I have a different point.
No, I mean, that's why we're here, because it doesn't meet the requirements for a single family, which is what the variance is for, is to allow a single family on this lot. Right, the R27, and Mr. Bowen can correct me when I totally misstate this, but the R27 allows for single family homes on a R27 lot, but this doesn't meet that minimum requirement to allow it. And so that's the variance that we're here for tonight.
Correct. One family detached dwellings are allowed. It's a use that's widely permitted in the zoning ordinance. It's allowed, in most zoning districts. It's typically seen as a use with not a lot of noxious externalities or anything of that sort. So it is allowed, but in this case, it does not meet the lot width and lot area requirements that would be required for a single family home.
Ms. Malice.
Mr. Bowen or Mr. Rissy, this is yours. Did we send a notice to the owners of 844?
I will refer that question to Mr. Rissy since I was out of the office when the letters to neighbors were sent. I believe that property is owned in a trust and the owner is deceased.
Mr. Rissy, did we send a notice?
I'll look for confirmation, but we sent notices to the surrounding neighbors as with all cases.
Could you confirm that, please?
Sure.
There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true.
Mr. Bowen, well, Mr. Rissy's looking at that. If this were a attached house, are there similar minimum lot requirements? If this were going to be built, what was previously built, would they still be requiring a variance?
I will take a look at the plans, but this is another situation where the question might be better directed to Mr. Rissy as he was the primary.
I'll take that question while I look up the.
Sorry,
thank you, Stephen.
I was trying to make some progress without distracting anyone.
I have another question that we can.
The answer is yes. A two-family attached house requires a different lot size, but either one would require a variance from the BZA to be built.
Thank you. Ms. Malice.
So I don't know. I don't want to burden Mr. Rissy with more questions if he's checking, but if we were to approve this, what effect would it have on the rights of the adjoining property in terms of where they could build? So right now this proposed is 2 feet off the property line. What setback for fire or for any other reasons would the other property owner be required to build to?
The other property owner would have to build the same setbacks as the subject property. It would be the same setbacks for all one-family detached dwellings in the zoning district.
So if this property is 2 feet off the property line, could he build 2 feet off of his property line?
Not by right.
No, I understand, but what about separation of single family homes? Can you build single family homes 4 feet?
So again, there's differences between the zoning requirements and the building code requirements.
Yes.
The zoning requirements are the typical 10 feet, 1 feet can be reduced to 8. Building requirements are more flexible. You can build just about anything with enough engineering and funds to do so.
Firewalls and things like that. So the reason I'm concerned that we haven't heard from the estate of 844 on this, because I don't know if it
would you like to hear from me? I'm sorry. Would you like to get my input on any of this? Could I thought I was speaking.
I'm sorry. We're going to get you in a second. We're just having a discussion with staff to get our baseline questions, but we will definitely hear from you very shortly.
I can help Stephen out. We did send a mailed notice to the adjacent neighbor.
They beat me to it, but I just found it as well. The address that was on file was 844. It was the actual address of the property.
So if you look at the zoning records right now, it's owned by the estate, or the property records. It's owned by the estate, and it's been handled by an attorney that's in the next building. And I feel like he should be notified that we're taking an action here on property next door.
The notice was sent to them, Ms. Mouse.
It was sent.
Yes.
Okay, not 844.
Not on April 4th?
No, Meg just said it was sent to 844.
Nope, we have a letter to the estate of James Wu. The address is 2300 Clarendon Boulevard, Suite 607.
That's correct.
dated this month,
And when was that?
dated October 1st, 2024.
October 1st. And we have not had a response, staff has not had any kind of response from. Thank you.
None other than the applicants have supplied us.
Are we ready to hear from the applicant? Mr. Smith.
Thanks. First off, I want to thank the staff that we worked with, including Blake Bowen, Cedric Sutherland, and Jacob Alexander, and helping us out to get to this point. Just to clarify, because I feel like I need to at this point, our home at 846 North Burlington Street was destroyed in December 2023. After a lengthy police standoff, our neighbor blew up our house, which was connected to his as a part of a duplex. Details of our experience and the police report are included in our application. Our plan is to build a new house on our property, and we wish to build it as a single-family residence. Living next to James Yu, the aforementioned neighbor, introduced a great deal of trauma into our family's lives, which we deal with every day. We do not wish to build a duplex for what I hope are obvious reasons. Our notional design that we put forth will be congruent with the red brick design that you see throughout our neighborhood. We discussed this with multiple neighbors. Some of them are on this call, and we did get some approvals on that were signed and with their addresses. Unlike most or all of the applicants you hear from on this meeting, we do not want this. We did not want to go through this process. We have to go through this process. This isn't adding something to the house. This is rebuilding something that was destroyed and taken away from us. We did not have a choice in this matter. So in summary, we ask that you take all of this into consideration when making your decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Discussion.
I am concerned about the absence of any response from the estate at this point, but and that has nothing to do with the the merits of the project.
There might be a little more understanding, except for the circumstances that brought us to this point. So if the adjacent property owner was notified and we don't have a response, that's on them, not the applicants and not us.
I tend to agree with Ms. Freshman. And I also just wanted to add that before I was questioning of staff, I was concerned about the single family versus multi-family, but it looks like a variance is going to be required on this property regardless, right? And so I think that is what meets the the state's definition of hardship and for a variance. And so I think all of those requirements are met. And this applicant clearly is not acting in bad faith here. They had no choice. So I think I would be inclined to support this.
Motion on the screen.
Anyone else? Sure. Ms. Freshman.
I need the screen. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance V-11985-24-VA-1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
A motion by Ms. Freshman and seconded by Ms. Clark for approval. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Excuse me. Ms. Malice.
Abstain.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 3-1-1. Abstention.
Can I just
Ms.
say that
McCroskey.
I have all the sympathy in the world for this situation. It's extremely difficult. And I felt I had to vote no, just because of the nature of the lot and the zoning standards.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, can you please call the associated use permit?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the next case is the associated use permit for the same property. It is case number V-11986-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Lance and Jamie Hill Smith, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 2 feet to the building wall and rear deck, 1 feet to the building eave instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the rear deck and building eave as required, and to permit a right side setback of 5 feet to the building wall and rear deck, 4 feet to the building eave instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the deck and building eave as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 7 feet instead of 15 feet as required regarding a new one-family detached dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the premises known as 846 North Burlington Street within the Bluemont Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and I will note that we have the same piece of supplemental material and email from the owners regarding their neighborhood outreach efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Questions for staff? Mr. Bowen, quick question. We just approved a variance for this case. If this use permit does not get approved, can the applicants try again with that variance? Do the two go in a pair?
The previous variance, and of course, I'd have to look at all the conditions and all the associated plans, relative to how that might apply to a different project. But the variance is for the buildability of the lot for a one-family detached dwelling. So it's certainly possible in some respects, but that being said, we typically tie our approvals to the specific plans that are proposed. So I can easily also see there being permitting problems down the line if they can submit a completely different set of plans.
But the variance has been approved. That doesn't go away.
Correct.
But if we make modifications to the use permit or even deny the use permit, the variance still has force.
The buildability of the current proposal as it's shown in these drawings would require the approval of both, I guess, is perhaps one way to look at it.
Was there condition, the variance was conditioned on these drawings?
Typically, we would likely have that condition, but I will check. And perhaps, Stephen, you might know this offhand if you're still online, which conditions you included for this report.
I have it on the screen.
Thank you, Meg.
It includes the drawings and the condition on the variance.
So it would be possible to reopen that if
that's awkward.
I mean, but we can see where we go here.
They appeared to be linked because of that.
Yeah. Perhaps my question came a little late.
Yeah, it's tricky to talk about hypotheticals as always. Right. And I suppose I will leave it at that for now.
But we can cross that bridge later if we need to. Any further questions for staff? Would the applicant like to speak to your use permit?
Yeah, one second. Okay, we're clear. Yeah, it's a little confusing to me as when I was going over this with Blake and Cedric and others. I didn't know that there was going to be a two-parter to this. I thought this was all about just getting the variance. We have not engaged with an architect, and these plans could and will likely change. So, I mean, all these plans were developed by me under the direction of Blake and Jacob Alexander and Cedric. We went over these things, and you need to have this here, take away this, etc., to get to a point where it was acceptable for this meeting. But I would say that I don't think that I was totally clear that this was a two-parter.
So if we approve this tonight, you're going to be pretty much stuck with the plans as submitted. So if you're thinking of making changes, that could cause you approval problems down the line.
So what are we talking? Footprint? Or are we talking that the bathroom I've proposed has to be in that spot, etc.?
It says in accordance with the plans.
that the variance is in accordance with the plans.
But the use permit is in accordance with the plans, yeah, both of them.
Coming for the zoning.
And Mr. Kaplan, if I may, really with the use permit, we're looking at the setbacks. And so long as any subsequent revisions to the plans did not have more of an encroachment towards the property lines, generally speaking, it would not be out of compliance with an approved use permit from the BZA.
But we don't know how, it could be taller, it could be shorter, there could be a lot of changes to it that may or may not work.
We plan on building within this footprint and with the proposed height that we've asked for.
And of course, the BZA would be welcome to impose further conditions if they would like to, set a maximum height or, any other possibilities.
We work with plans. We don't help develop the plans. We really need plans in front of us.
Yeah, I was speaking more so to, tie them more specifically to the drawings and the parameters that are shown in the drawings.
I think it was our understanding we were just coming to the meeting for that first step, which was to get the zoning in order to build a single family home.
Correct.
We were very surprised to see it on the agenda for these two pieces. And I think that is kind of where we are at.
But that's because you need an associated use permit to build what it is the variance has allowed. I don't actually have a problem with a concept that I'm looking at. I don't care what's inside of it. As long as since the variance refers to the plans, that to me locks you into what we're looking at in terms of setbacks and distance from the street and that sort of.
We have no plans on changing any of that.
But my point is that the variance was tied to these plans and the use permit would be the same. And if you decided to change it demonstrably, you would have to come back, just the way other applicants have in this hearing and many hearings. So that's I think the explanation is you need them both, and you have at least a concept plan associated with your variance that is in this use permit.
But Ms. Freshman,
and we have gone through. I'm sorry.
But Ms. Freshman, the variance was predicated on these drawings.
Exactly.
But that's my point. If they come back, then they have to come back for a new variance?
No, I only meant to say that if they, the implication was, this is what we've come up with working with staff in terms of setbacks and placement and height and that sort of thing. And there wouldn't be any reason for them to come back unless they found that they didn't want to build that and they had some other kind of a request that would change it.
But they're going to be tied to windows. They're going to be tied to door placements, balconies. Anything that changes is going to require them to come back for a new variance.
Well, what would be the alternative?
I think the alternative is to defer this matter until they can get an architect to actually develop a plan. I think that's what they plan to do.
I can only say that I went with the direction that I was given in the pre-planning of this by the people that I worked with from the county. That's all I can say. I was told that it would behoove me to have these plans in a place that was deemed acceptable and that we could make alterations later. That's what I was told. And I'm not talking about alterations to the setback. I'm not talking about alterations to the footprint that we're proposing. I'm not talking about alterations to the distance between the fence and the dwelling. I'm not talking about those things at all.
But
I'm talking about the placement of a bathroom. I'm talking about the placement of the width of a living room, things like that.
So I would say, I think, and I would like staff to either say we agree or we don't at the end, but I think as to internal things, internal to the house, you can do whatever you like with those. But I think the issue really is if you're going to go to an architect and get a redesign that includes redesigning the exterior of the house, for any purposes, like not its location necessarily, but if you're going to get that redesigned, that's probably going to require you coming back anyway. And we might want to defer the use permit part of the drawings, or at least defer some of it, so that we approve once what you finally have designed, because I think staff probably gave you good guidance as to where you would locate this, but I think we also tie people to the design of the structure. And if that's going to change, then there's probably going to be another time when we have to revisit this.
Can we separate these two so that we do not have to do what we just went through with this first part?
Well, the problem is that the conditions were tied to these drawings that you submitted.
But we will not, we will completely adhere to the footprint that was in the variance that was granted with the footprint of this place.
It's more than the footprint. It's also with the exterior, the window placements, the materials.
Does staff agree with that assessment?
I think a very strict reading of the condition language would tie them to the exact drawings. Technically speaking, a use permit is a setback modification. You are granting a specific setback. So I understand the concern about the drawings and the possibility of window placement if you want to take that reading of the criteria. That being said, I think, you are granting a specific wall setback in these cases. And, you don't necessarily have to reconsider the entire portions of the, I think Ms. Malice mentioned the possibility of the height changing, as long as the height is by right, it's not a portion of this request. So I don't think that's necessarily something that factors into the consideration of the use permit. And, we don't differentiate between wall and window setbacks. We give setbacks to the wall. Windows are inset into the wall. So I wouldn't say, strictly speaking, the placement of windows is a tremendous consideration to zoning when it comes to permitting. So I understand your considerations. I don't necessarily see them as outright problems, though.
So I'm a little confused as to how to proceed, because I would have had a discussion about what I'm seeing here. But this is what we're seeing here may not actually be what's the applicant wants.
It's also not entirely uncommon for, construction drawings or permit drawings are not a requirement of the BZA process. It's not, unheard of that there are some changes to design. Sometimes, as you're going through the permitting process, perhaps another department, ISD, DES, will require a certain feature to move that did not, was not apparent at the onset of zoning, which is typically the first to review drawings because it's the most fundamental concern of placement of the property. So I would not say that we would absolutely have an issue with small changes to the drawings, as it does happen through the permitting process. And, sometimes it's left up to the zoning administrator or the zoning plan review team to assess whether, a small design tweak is compliant with the BZA's approval. And many times we do bring cases back to you if we find that this design change is substantial enough.
Mr. Rissy, did you want to weigh in?
Yes. As you guys know, you don't need to tie your approval to a set of plans, though you typically do. If you are comfortable with the footprint shown and the height of the structure that's shown, you could just strike the words architectural drawings from the condition of this use permit and the preceding variance, which you can do both of, and just replace the words architectural drawings with the word height, and that would tie then to the footprint and height.
Where's the height shown?
The elevations.
There's an architectural drawing.
There is an architectural.
I think that's a good idea. I think that it's a good compromise. I think they came in good faith with what they thought was going to be the concept of their plan. There's no reason to think that they necessarily won't build this. And so if they have an approval for what with the edits Mr. Rissy suggested, then if they find that an architect says this is nuts, you can't do this, and they have to redo the whole thing, then they come back, just like hundreds of other people.
They'll have to pay.
Well, I mean, that's
don't care.
Of course, that's a risk. That's a risk, but that's.
I would really like to do that on the variance, right? Because the variance approved the ability to build on the lot, and I'm not sure it should have been tied to these particular drawings.
I think that's what Mr. Rissy suggested,
And
is
then-
to go
yeah,
back
so-
and
so I
edit
don't-
that approval.
I don't know what's going to happen with the use permit, but I would really like to do that with the variance that we just did.
Mr. Chairman, having voted in the majority, I would like to reconsider variance V-11985-24-VA-1.
But you abstained.
Oh, I didn't
ha-
vote in the majority.
Having voted in the majority, I would
Oh,
like.
you have to do that.
I would like to reconsider variance V-11985-24-VA-1.
Yes.
It's a motion.
Okey-dokey.
That's so motion made by the chair, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
And Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Got that motion real quick. Oh, you have, okay. So let's see. I would like to motion for approval using staff language with the following edits.
Case number 11985-24-VA1.
Case number 11985-24-VA-1. Let's see, so strike
And the
and the
architectural
architectural drawings attached to the staff report.
dated.
Well, I think, well, we want the footprint shown on the proposed plat, so we still want to leave staff report dated October 11th. So I want to strike and the architectural drawings attached to the, and the architectural drawings. And I think that does it. So as comment that would basically lock the applicants into the footprint, but not the drawings. That's the intent of my motion.
Do you want to strike that last architectural drawings at the end of that paragraph?
Yes. And strike architectural drawings at the end of the first paragraph as well. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
It's just site plan dated October 11th. I mean, if you take it, you still have to refer to the date for the proposed plat and setback.
I'm just taking, so striking proposed plat.
It's actually staff report dated, so that's just drawings that are in the packet.
So I'm just striking and the architectural drawings. And then also striking or architectural drawings at the end. So we're still leaving the reference to the staff report in regards to the proposed plat and setbacks on the site plan. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
The motion made by the chair with those edits, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Abstain.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 3-1. Back to the use permit, which has already been called.
We just clarify with the applicants that they understand what we just did.
We understand.
So you have the variance absent any of the specific architecturals.
Right. So you have the ability to build on the lot within that footprint without being tied to these specific plans. So at the very least, you have a variance. Now we're just dealing with the details of the use permit.
Use permit.
So I guess.
Mr. Chairman, as a resolution, all of the details in the resolution are referring to the plat setback drawings?
In the use permit.
I'm just wondering if all of these numbers are relevant or do some of them have to be removed?
I'm not understanding the question. And I'm not sure the question was for me.
The resolution has a lot of very specific measurements.
In the use permit resolution.
Yes. Is there anything in there that was tied to the drawings that were just deleted?
Ms. Freshman, if I may,
Yes, sir. Please.
if they build within the footprint that is shown, all of the setbacks that are mentioned in the resolution are fine. It would
Okay,
only
good.
be if they exceeded what was shown in the footprint, which is still part of the last condition.
Okay, and the variance as amended only addresses that same.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just making sure that all of these numbers are consistent with with the variance as amended.
Correct. They are.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
so the BZA has now approved all the setbacks. Is that what I'm understanding?
No.
No, we've approved the ability to build on the lot. We have not addressed setbacks.
Well,
but didn't you refer to?
Yes, but I think we still need to do.
We included the survey.
We included the survey.
And the survey shows the setbacks, does it not?
You tied them to that set of drawings, but you have not approved their request to reduce the setbacks. That's part of this use permit.
Yes.
So I really don't understand. By the way, did we vote on the motion to reconsider?
We did.
We did.
Yes.
Okay, so that we don't, there's no main motion there, right? It's just
No.
to reconsider.
We did the main, we did the
variance.
We did both.
But there's no motion on 986.
There's no motion on 986. That's
On
what
the
we're
use
trying to
permit.
determine now.
So it would be moot for me to question why 2 and 5, not 3 and, as far as setbacks go, we've already established that.
Kind of. So, so that's what Ms. McCroskey was getting at.
Yeah. Yeah, if we bound them to the site survey,
Then
I think that showed the setbacks.
Right. Then why? Right. I guess that's why. Why wouldn't the variance cover what this use permit basically covers now?
So, but I'm saying there's no point in questioning the setbacks in this use permit because we've already established them in the variance. I mean, for instance, I would wonder why 2 on one side, 5 on the other, why not 3, why not 5 and 2, but that's already
I
established.
think that's right.
So what remains to be discussed? Well, what part of the use permit?
Mr. Rissy had confirmed that the details in the use permit proposed resolution conform to the revised variance.
I'm not sure if that was a question, but I'm going to take it as a question and say correct.
Thank you. I thought I was confirming what you said, but we've been going round and round on this.
Right. Are we ready for a motion?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11986-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman and seconded by Ms. Clark for approval. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I know it's not my time to speak, but if I might, as you've amended the conditions of the variance, you may want to also amend the condition to the use permit to allow the same thing.
If that's the board's intent.
If that's the board's intent.
My purpose for the last one was that if this use permit needs to come back to us, then I didn't want the applicants to have to go back through the variance. I'm not sure where I would stand on a request similar to that for the use permit.
Well,
Ms. Freshman?
number 1 says, also refers to the architectural drawings attached to the staff report. So we would want to delete that as well, since that's the way we amended the variance.
So now we would be approving a use permit with no drawings.
Right, I'm
I
not sure
can't
that that's
support
the
that.
direction I would want to go in. I was just trying, in the previous variance, I was just trying to prevent the applicant from having to have to amend a variant if the use permit needs to get amended, because it seems like they're not as far along in their plans as most applicants are. So I was just trying to spare them the several $1,000 expense of having to redo the variance if the use permit changes. But I don't know, have we ever, Ms. Malice, Ms. Freshman, have we ever done a use permit not tied to plans? And is that?
May I interject?
Please.
We were advised by both our builder that we've contracted, and I believe that we did get advice from the county that we should not be engaging with an architect at this time, because the main thing that we wanted to get done was to get the footprint, the setback approved, so that we could then engage with an architect and go on with the next step. But I was also told at the same time that it would behoove me and improve our efforts and our standing if we did have at least a notional idea of what we wanted to do. I feel it's very close to what we want to eventually come up with, but again, there's definitely a chance for
the footprint will be the same.
The footprint's going to stay the same. Absolutely.
That's
The setback will
changing.
stay the same, no doubt.
Yeah, so we've done the variance. So normally what we would do in this circumstance is we would offer a deferral for a period of time for you to engage the services of an architect and have more definite plans that come before us. I think that's the struggle that you're seeing on this board, that in granting a use permit, it's I've only been here for this is my 3rd year, and we've never granted a use permit that wasn't tied to specific plans, and that's because we have to judge compatibility with the neighborhood, and that's kind of difficult for us to do without specific plans in front of us. And so to avoid the risk of you having to get an approval and then have to come back before us, pay the fee again, and wait your turn in line again, my suggestion would be that we offer a deferral for however long we think you think you would need to engage the services of your architect and come up with more definite plans. But I'm happy to hear from my colleagues.
I would support that.
So I think if the applicant is willing, I do think that is the right thing to do, because what that is going to avoid is a second fee, which is frankly almost, if you're going to go talk with an architect, which I think, is the right thing to do, it's almost assured that you're going to have to come back a second time. And if we defer it, then this matter just stays on the docket, the fee's paid, and you can come in with it later. We should be careful, because I think we have a motion on the table.
We do have a motion on the table.
Okay.
So I assume that we could withdraw that motion?
So we could come.
Mr. Chairman, I will offer a substitute motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer the matter V-11986-24-UP-1 until such time as architectural drawings can be developed.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. McCroskey for a indefinite deferral until drawings can be completed. And I assume the applicant supports that.
Can we have just an interpretation from staff as opposed to picking a date like December?
I think that's my question, is how would we know which? We are definitely up on a timeline with insurance.
So from my perspective, you would just work with staff, and whenever staff gives you the completeness check, then staff can get it on the next available BZA hearing.
Okay. Yeah, because we are certainly running out of our timeline with insurance as far as being able to rebuild.
Mr. Bowen,
what would be a reasonable date?
Yeah, I mean, from speaking with the applicants previously, I do know that they have a deadline with insurance, so I'm in an indefinite deferral. I don't think would be
What's
really consistent with their
what's the insurance deadline?
financing timeline.
Insurance, we have to have it built complete by December
The whole
of
house?
next year. Of next year.
Of next year.
Oh,
Yeah, we have 2 years to build.
So,
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Bowen, so if, you, from when the applicant gives you plans and ready for their check, how long do you think that takes to get on our agenda?
The typical timeline for a BZA application is at least 2 months. That being said, it might be different here because we are familiar with aspects of this project. It could be condensed, but depending on the plans we receive and the complexity of them, 2 to 3 months would be standard. I would hope to be quicker if we can.
February?
So I'm not sure what's the harm in an indefinite deferral so the applicant isn't tied to our schedule.
I don't really know how we would revisit or reopen that case without it being set to a date certain on an agenda.
You would just put it on the agenda when it's ready, as if it were an application that just came in.
I don't want to put them on a schedule that they have to worry about.
But they already have a timeline. They already have a mandated timeline. So to me, I would say I would pick February, but
if they're ready sooner.
They're ready sooner. I don't know, but I mean, I don't know how long it takes them to engage an architect and do this, but they certainly wouldn't be ready in December. So I would say February.
I don't know why we wouldn't.
We would be ready in December.
Be ready.
Well, because in order to be heard in December, you'd have to have plans pretty fast to get through the whole review process.
Got to be reviewed and advertised.
And advertising and all that kind of stuff, is like, so.
It's just hard because we had to wait 6 months on the county to release a report before we could even start this process. And we are on a timeline to give our family some security that we will have a home again.
We're not trying to delay you. We're trying to make it open-ended so we're not pressuring you with the date. If we give you a date, then you're on our clock, and I'd prefer that we not do that.
But they're saying they have to be completed by next December. So they already have that pressure. We're trying to figure out a way to accommodate them so that they can get an approval and then, start the next day.
Yeah, anything to fast track this would be appreciated. Anything to fast track it. Anything at all would be great.
No, there's nothing that we can
do. There's nothing we could do.
We can do to fast track it.
But if we put it on for January and then have to defer it again.
We don't always have a meeting in January.
Well, we don't know our January schedule, so it would be tough to. Right, so
we don't know even have a date. Right.
Staff's objection is that there's no way to queue it up for us. But I think it would just be, I don't know if staff would object, but it'd just be treated as any new applicant that comes in. As soon as it's ready, get it on our agenda. Mr. Rissy has a hand up.
Yes, I know that both staff and the BZA aren't keen on multiple deferrals. I think this is a very unusual case. I would recommend deferring to December. If the applicants are not ready by the time we advertise for that, then we'll recommend that we defer until such time as they are ready. That might be 1 month later, it might be 2 months later, but it can give us a point to check in.
Okay.
That sounds great.
That's a good suggestion. I like that one.
So, Mr. Chairman, I made a substitute motion. It was seconded. Is it being amended? Is that where we're at right now?
I think that's the plan.
Being
you can just
amended
withdraw it.
The December BZA hearing. We still have to vote on it, and then we make it a main motion and vote on that.
So it's December 18th.
Okay.
Ms. Malice, would you entertain a?
You did it. Yeah, we already entertained the change to December.
So I need to call the roll for that?
Yeah.
So
just for the substitute deferral to December.
Do we need a second for that?
It's already been seconded.
Who seconded?
Ms. McCroskey.
So a motion to alter the main motion to December.
No, the main motion was to approve. I made a motion to defer to, and then it was amended to December. So we were going to vote on the substitute motion to defer it to December.
Okay, a vote on the substitute motion to defer to December, made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. McCroskey. I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0.
Okay, now it's the main motion. It becomes the main motion. We just vote
Right.
on it.
So the main motion we just spoke on. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Ms. Malice and seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. We'll see you in December.
Thank you.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Hopefully.
Well, if we have, to, okay. For my colleagues, this was case, what number was this?
12.
12. So we still have 4 more on the agenda and it is reaching 9:51. Do we want to push through and take care of these applicants who have been waiting or our carryover?
I personally do not think we can do 4 cases, including one denial tonight. Can we find out which cases the attendees are asking for?
We're here for the next case, the applicant and I.
Oh, Skylar.
I mean, I assume everyone's still here.
And I'm here for 1806 Tuckahoe. I think that's 2 cases from now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming everyone's going to be still here with us.
Right.
What do you have?
No, I just got to go back.
No,
I do have a scheduling conflict for tomorrow. I do apologize. I know that's not indicative on you folks, but I'll be in an area that I don't know if I'll have phone service to be able to get in very adequately. I'll be in West Virginia actually after 4 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now repeat everything. What case are you here? I mean, another case. Another case? Which one?
Not this.
Alcohol? Skylar is the. Do whatever you.
Let's take a bio break.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. Mr. Bowen, can you call the next case, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the next case on the agenda is case number V-11987-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Skylar Aarons on behalf of David and Carolyn Friedman, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 7.6 feet to the building wall, 6.6 feet to the building eave instead of 14 feet to the building wall, 10 feet to the building eave as required, to permit a left side setback of 9.8 feet to the building wall instead of 10 feet to the building wall as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 17.4 feet instead of 24 feet as required, regarding the conversion of an existing screen porch into a habitable space and second story addition to an existing existing one family detached dwelling in the R8 and R10 zoning district on the premises known as 2919 North Greencastle Street within the Yorktown Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and we do not have any supplemental materials nor any speakers signed up to speak on this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
Could the porch be enclosed by right if it didn't encroach any further?
If Mr. Risty is back online, I will throw that question to him as the author. And if he is not, I will take a look at the plat as we speak.
It's possible that the porch could be enclosed by right. There is a provision in the zoning ordinance that allows some encroaching porches to be enclosed, but they would have to meet the requirements, which is to establish when it was constructed. It may also limit what they could do because you have to keep the existing structure to abide by that regulation.
So they'd sort of have to build on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay. So is the answer generally no or generally yes?
The answer is if it meets the criteria, and that's case dependent.
Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant with us?
Yes.
He is. Would you like to speak to your application?
Yes, please. My name is Skylar. I, as always, appreciate the opportunity to present this and appreciate all the work that staff puts in with these. Also appreciate you folks sticking a little longer and getting me through tonight. I just want to touch a couple of things here. The structure itself, the main structure, the primary project, if you will, the pop-up can all be done by right. The question sort of comes into this screened-in porch area that honestly, it kind of felt like it was a gray area when I first approached staff about it. And I think the safer assumption was that it needed a use permit because it was a change of the use from non-habitable to habitable. If the walls would have already been closed in on this structure, we could have actually just went above it by right. This particular structure also has kind of a strange setup. Typically the screen porches that you see that are existing in Arlington, they don't have like they have a crawl space, for instance, underneath. They don't have a full basement. But on this particular house, the basement looks to be original, and there is basement underneath of it. Kind of the issue with this as well is if, in the future, if they ever had cracking or had to replace like the posts and stuff, that would trigger a need for a use permit. And I believe the repairs would trigger the need for to do the repairs, you need a building permit. And then going through that process, they would say, well, it was non-conforming and you need a use permit. Generally, that's what's happened in the past when I've done projects over the last 20 years, any type of modification to a non-conforming. But aside from those, non-standard elements, again, we're not asking to really, encroach any further. We're going around an existing footprint that's been around for a long time. I'd say the use is kind of modest compared to what you see in a lot of the houses that are built up. A lot of people are maxing out their lots. These homeowners have been there 30 years. They've got all the surrounding support from the neighbors, which I find is usually the most difficult. We've also gotten, I believe, additional support from other neighbors around, just outside the area. I don't believe this is the furthest encroachment in the area. It looks to me like there was a couple other properties that may have had structures that were a little bit closer to the property line. So I feel like we're within realm of some of the existing structures in the neighborhood. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to touch on some of those key points. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
Mr. Ahrens, did I understand you to say that if this was not a porch but a structure that was encroaching, you could build above it by right?
Generally, well, that's the whole thing about building over a non-conforming original structure, is that you can build over them by right without having to get a use permit. It's usually when you go outside that footprint and stuff like that is when you have to get a use permit. But in Arlington, you can build over non-conformings by right. In this particular case, though, it's not a enclosed structure; it's a screened structure.
Thank you.
Like similar to the garage issue, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion?
The applicant in their justification had mentioned that, one of their objectives was a new office, which I see is on the porch level, and that area would be the new office. I could see myself supporting the enclosing of that space, but I don't think I can support going over it.
May I rebut or?
Sure.
Yeah, so that above area kind of creates the needed fourth bedroom. A lot of standard housing nowadays has like the 4 bedrooms upstairs. And that area really kind of sews up that portion of adding the 4th bedroom.
Would anyone like to make a motion or comment?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11987-24-UP1 subject to the conditions listed.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple points. This is the meeting of building over garages and porches, and I don't like to support that as not being in compliance with the zoning ordinance, but in this case, because it seems like this is the right place to allow it, partly because this screened porch was apparently built at the time the house was built back in the 1950s. And given that there's a foundation below it, it does seem like it's the right place to add on. We do have some setbacks left, not as much as would normally be required for this zoning district, but given all the other factors, I'm not going to oppose it.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
No.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark. Ms. McCruskey.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you to the board. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Mr. Bowen, can we call the next case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case on the agenda is case number V-11988-24-UP-1, a use permit by Heidi Fitzharris on behalf of Elizabeth Zane, the owner, to permit a street setback of 17.5 feet to the porch platform, 16.5 feet to the porch eave, instead of 21 feet to the porch platform, 19.5 feet to the porch eave as required, regarding a front porch addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1806 North Tuckahoe Street within the Arlington East Falls Church Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. Please note that while we do not have additional speakers for this case, we do have supplemental materials. That includes 3 letters of support, Gigi Montgomery, from Barbara Corman, and from Douglas and Jennifer McEwen, all neighbors of the subject property.
Any questions for staff? The applicant with us.
Yes, I
Ms.
am here.
Wade, would you like to speak to your application?
Maybe just briefly, I think you have all the material, but just to say that we have support from a significant number of our neighbors. And I think the proposed porch is in line with what others have done in our neighborhood, including our direct neighbors.
Thank you. Anything further?
No, although I see Heidi is there. So
Yeah, no,
I
sorry, I was addressing your architect.
Yeah, so there's an existing house and that's at 24.6. So that's already going closer than the 25-foot setback. We are requesting a porch to go to 17.6 feet. And that's just so that the porch is actually usable there. And as Beth just said, the neighbor, if you're looking at the house to the left, has a porch that already encroaches in that setback also. I believe they went before the BZA and was approved.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Discussion with the board? Or motion? Ms. Clark.
Report from 1811.
The rear neighbor.
The rear neighbor, Beth, do you?
Oh, why? So the rear neighbor, we sent a notice by certified mail. It's a builder, so they're in the process of they have they're building the house behind us, and we sent the builder a notification. We just didn't get a response, and all the other surrounding neighbors are supportive.
Thank you. Anyone like to make a motion? On the screen.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting a use permit V-11988-24-UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark for approval. Is there any further discussion? We'll call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark. Aye. Ms. McCruskey.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-1.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, can you call the next case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. Next case on the agenda is case number V-11989-24-UP-1. This is a use permit request by Celebrity Homes LC, the owner, to permit a street setback of 13 feet to the roof eave instead of 21 feet to the roof eave as required from North Huntington Street, regarding projecting roof eaves for second-story addition atop an existing non-conforming footprint, a street-facing porch, and a new driveway to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R8 zoning district on the premises known as 2100 Patrick Henry Drive within the Terra Leeway Heights Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. We do not have supplemental materials nor any speakers sign up to speak on this case.
Ms. Ryan, what do you have for us?
Some neighbor support late received.
A single neighbor.
Yes.
So, I'm gonna skip ahead here and I can you address why we don't have any other neighborhood outreach?
But there was actually supplemental neighbor outreach supplied yesterday.
Give me just a moment. I will look that up.
List of all the activities, all the knocking on doors.
I'm sorry, do my colleagues have questions for staff other than the outreach?
I don't know if this is, I think it's a question for the applicant.
Why don't we hear from the applicant?
Or whose report is this? This is Brett's. I was trying to figure out which plat we should be looking at. As far as one that shows the new dimensions. Oh, I see this. I had trouble understanding this plat. I mean, that's the plat, right?
Yes, we're going above the existing house walls, so the same footprint exists on both the new and.
I think we're just approving eaves on this and that.
And I don't understand the eaves. Where are the eaves shown?
The existing eaves are shown in the red circle at 13.0 to the eave. That's the existing eave. And we are going directly up above the existing wall. So we're approximately be at the same 13 feet to the proposed eaves.
Are the proposed eaves in the same place as the existing eaves?
Actually, a little bit less.
So the proposed eaves are less than the existing?
Yes.
Okay, and that dimension is to the new eave or the old eave?
That is to the existing eave. The request is, I believe, references the new eaves.
Right, so picture. So I just wanted to see can you just mention what the difference is between what the old eaves are and what you're requesting?
I'd have to see the actual request.
You don't know what you're asking for?
Not to the inch.
Because this, you're asking for a 13-foot setback to the roof eave.
Perhaps they are exactly the same.
Does this says 14.7? Yeah, that's why I couldn't understand the.
I don't see it on any of the existing.
The resolution is to 13 feet. So the proposed and the existing are the same. We're asking for 13 feet to the proposed eave.
Okay, there it is.
Did you have other neighborhood feedback besides the letter you just handed out? Because that's the only one that I've seen.
When I spoke earlier, I did say that there was no supplemental materials. It appears I did miss an email yesterday, so that is on me. My apologies. It was received at 12:09 yesterday afternoon. Believe
You have addresses?
it is a summary of neighborhood outreach efforts. I just sent it, Meg, to you via email. I'm not sure you're able to possibly pull that on screen, but that might be a way to reference that document and talk through the different neighbors and the outreach that was made to them. If not, I will read from my end.
That is the only written approval I've received from neighbors. I have verbal approval and no objections from any of the neighbors I spoke with, which included approximately 10 neighbors.
So if you read the guidelines, we were requesting written approval.
And
tried my best.
And nobody would sign?
No one would. I got what I got at the last hour and
So
no one else.
I'm going to need to talk into the microphone or
Yes.
raise the platform.
I do not live in the neighborhood. This is not a personal residence of mine, although I tried multiple occasions to knock on doors. And I did become friendly with a lot of the neighbors and requested written emails and texts. But this is what I was able to get. It's just the one written.
So if we deferred this and asked you to go get more signatures, you would say that's a waste of time?
I would try my best if that's what the board was asking.
Would anyone like to make a motion or further discussion?
You know, just again, on this application and one before it, the to wit line has been blank. And it makes me uncomfortable that the notary doesn't fill it in. I guess it's the notary's fault that they don't fill it in.
I also think it's bad language on the form, like if it were, if it said, applicant's printed name.
Yes.
So I'm not.
Yeah.
I think it's just everyone's at fault here.
Okay.
Yeah. Given the degree of this thing, given that they can build up the second story by right, and it's a question of this eave, which is really not substantially changing. I know you mentioned a deferral, Ms. Malice, but I'm prepared to make a motion to approve this unless somebody has other issues they want to discuss.
No,
All
I would just say if we were asking for anything else that altered the
Right.
footprint of this house, I would
Right.
disagree. And just wanted to say that for the record so that
Right.
we don't start getting more and more of these,
And-
because everyone's
Well,
listening to us right
particularly
now.
because we only have one neighbor. But on the other hand, if the whole thing can be done by right to defer it
For the
for a
eaves.
collection of neighbors for matter of inches on an eve is
Right. I agree with that.
overkill, I think.
Right. And for the millions of people watching at home,
Right,
please
exactly.
get the written please get approvals in. But
Don't try this at home.
No, that we're really grumpy at this time of day.
And I will say our Miss Petrosini, our assistant, did email the applicant for feedback as well, listing the 7 neighboring houses.
Right.
So we did not overlook that, just for the record. But thank you.
So I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the proposed resolution and use permit case V1198924UP1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second,
Motion by Miss McCroskey, seconded by Miss Freshman for approval as advertised. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Miss Malice,
Aye.
Miss Freshman, Miss Clark, Miss McCroskey.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for the eaves passes 5-0. And I believe that brings us to our last case for tonight.
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the last case for this evening is case number V-11990-24-VA-1, a variance request by Amy and Seth Locke, the owners, to permit a total main building footprint of 29.93% instead of 28% as permitted regarding a new rear screen porch addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R10 zoning district on the premises known as 4125 34th Street North Gulf Branch Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the variance. An additional alternative resolution and conditions have been provided should the BZA find that the variance request meets all of the above criteria and sees fit to approve the subject variance with conditions. Please note that we have supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packets were assembled and printed. This is 2 letters of support from neighbors, one named Dawn Ellison, the other named Brandon McTavish. And we do not have any speakers who have signed up to speak on this case. And it looks like Meg is also passing out additional supplemental materials.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I do.
Miss Malice.
Who's the staff person? It's Mr. Rizzi. The staff report contains aerial images from 2019 and 2021. I'm wondering what we should take away from these images, why they were provided.
I was illustrating that the rear deck that was approved with the new house was replaced sometime between the 2 images, sometime prior to March 2021, with the elevated platform that you see in the picture on screen today.
Okay. And do we have any information about how that came about?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
But that was pre this owner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Hear from the applicant.
Great. Thank you very much. I know it's very late, so we'll try to move quickly and get our information out for you. But thank you to the staff, the board, for your consideration. as you were just saying, we want to make clear that this structure that we'd like to build a roof over and make a screened-in porch, it was an existing patio structure when we bought our house last year. We are not looking to increase the footprint any more than it already is. And when we bought the house, we did surveys, we had home inspections, we had everything due diligence looking into it. We did not know about this issue. And we bought the house expecting to be able to turn this patio into a screened-in porch. And the reasons we really have always wanted to do that go back to when I was younger. I had a tick bite caused Lyme disease, and I had an irregular heartbeat. And we're very, very concerned with the repercussions that can happen as a result of that and what could happen with our children. And we're not able to use our backyard as much as we'd like. And so that's a really important reason for us to make sure that we are able to actually have the outdoor space and use that we would like to enjoy. In addition, my daughter, as we noted in our application, has a severe allergy to mosquito bites. We provided now a picture for you of what happens when she gets bit by mosquitoes. And this actually inhibits her from spending time outside during the summer months. And we included some of this information in our application. We also included a letter from her physician. And I just want to make clear, I think if you read the staff's recommendation for denial, one of the things it's focusing on is the letter we included. And I think it was a misinterpretation of the doctor's letter. When the doctor said that she doesn't have restrictions, what the doctor was trying to convey is that when she gets stung by a mosquito bite and her face, ears, and other parts of her body swell up, and it looks like she's very sick and contagious, she should not be sent home from school. And she should be able to participate in activities. So that was the point of that letter. And when we saw the staff's recommendation to deny and how they interpreted that letter, we went back to our physician, and our physician provided a new letter yesterday, which we've now provided for you. And I just want to highlight this new information that the doctor provided, and explains that our daughter has a severe allergic skin reaction to mosquito bites. She's particularly sensitive about having bites on her ears and around her eyes as her face gets very swollen. The facial or affected area on her body can last for several days. Benadryl and other antihistamines make her sleepy and do not seem to make that much of a difference. For obvious reasons, Jenna cannot be on oral steroids every time she gets bit. Having the yard sprayed on a regular basis is not practical given the number of mosquitoes lately and how sensitive she is. It is absolutely imperative that Jenna be outside for at least 1 hour per day for fresh air, for getting kids off of screens, and for her mental health. I think that Jenna would greatly benefit from having a screened-in porch for all the above mentioned reasons. If I can be of further assistance, please contact me. And the other thing I just wanted to address, in addition to this information, was in the recommendation, the staff noted that it is possible to build a screened-in porch on the existing structure. It would just be a small screened-in porch. And I want to address that directly by saying that given the restrictions on our family of being outside, I request the ability to have a screened-in porch of this size, of the size we thought we could do when we bought the house, because I want to be able to spend time as a family, all four of us, outside, to be able to have meals outside together, and frankly, to be able to throw a ball with her in the screened-in porch and not be limited to a small area where I'll be sending her outside by herself and say, honey, why don't you go outside for your playtime outside? But it's not enough space for all of us to be there together. So for those reasons, and then finally, I just want to say again, we're not asking to build a new structure on the lot or encroach on more space. And so I think it's important to note that there's not going to be any impact whatsoever on drainage or any other effects of that nature. What we're asking for is just to be able to put a roof and then screens around that structure. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I actually want to ask a question of staff. So is this property technically in violation of the zoning ordinance right now?
Stephen, would you care to answer that directly? If not, I'm happy to answer it myself.
I've actually gotten help from a plan reviewer on this who says no. Jillian's actually online. She was the plan reviewer for this case, and she just answered that for me.
Thank you, Jillian.
So my question is whether the property is in violation. So I guess my question is, well, how does that work? Because if it doesn't, it's the total main building footprint is the violation, correct? And so how can it be that it's not in violation now and just making it a screened porch? Isn't that treated the same as a patio?
The roof makes it
A structure.
a structure. I had the same
Okay.
issue with my
Thank
porch.
you. Okay. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah, the zoning ordinance is explicit that porches count in main building footprint and coverage calculations, whereas patios
patios.
do not.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood
Patios do not.
between porch and patio because I was confused as well.
It's my confusion. That's fine.
It's a very arcane difference in the zoning ordinance. It's very, very specific.
So I'm really sorry that your daughter has problems with mosquitoes. They're really bad in Arlington, and we have the same problem, and so does everybody else in Arlington, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with it. I'm speaking for myself, but I think speaking for the board, we cannot evaluate medical issues. We're not doctors.
So I appreciate, go ahead, sorry.
We're not doctors. And if you were going to claim a medical issue as the reason for it, there would be a different process that you would go through. Then staff would, and I assume that staff did not evaluate this as a medical issue, as a disability.
The third approval criteria, there is some analysis of that in the variance, but I will ask Stephen, and it looks like Meg has her hand raised because perhaps Stephen does.
Yes, no, we
Stephen.
evaluated it based off of the letter that we had previously had submitted to us, and based off of what we were interpreting, as the applicant said, from that letter, we did not see the allergic reaction limiting the activities, and therefore as a disability that would be remedied through this variance.
This is as far as mosquito bites go, this is epidemic in Arlington. But anyway, so there's a condition that says, is this a medical disability issue? Would you change your mind if, on further reflection?
Ms. Malice, I'm not going to do that evaluation at 10:30 at night.
Right. That's why I think it's a different process. I think legal gets involved a little bit too. If that was the way you wanted to go, you would, have to, talk to staff about how to actually pursue that avenue.
Ms. Mouse, I'll just say that it is the same process they went through. They applied for a variance and they submitted material for that criteria, and it's just one of the criteria for a variance.
Okay.
The information that was submitted, we evaluated, and we did not feel that it met that criteria.
Okay.
However, they have
All right.
supplied new material, and you may take that into consideration.
Yeah, if I may, in the staff's recommendation and in what we reviewed in submitting our application, one of the criteria is, would the granting of the variance alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability?
Right.
And so we were responding to that. And I do think that providing a doctor's note from a professional is evidence to meet that criteria. Now, whether you agree with that, whether you agree with the doctor and so forth, that's entirely up to you. But I do think we've attempted to meet that criteria by providing evidence from a professional.
So,
and
again, it's not, we can't evaluate the medical. The board cannot evaluate the medical. Staff has to evaluate the medical aspects of it because we're just not in a position to. We can't, if staff says there's a medical issue, we will accept that. Then the second part of that is the relief that you're asking for reasonable, given what your medical condition is? It doesn't automatically grant that anything you ask for is granted. So if you're interested in pursuing that, I think a deferral is in order.
Yeah, it does appear that Mr. Ricci has his hand raised.
You have further to add?
Yes, with all due respect, Ms. Malice, I do think that it is up to the board to evaluate that criteria just as staff did. I don't think that you have to rely on staff's evaluation of that criteria any more than you have to rely on staff's evaluation of any of the other criteria. I think it is up to each of the members to evaluate the material before them and to decide whether the criteria have been met.
Well, the staff report right now says that the criteria is not met.
Correct.
And I would just say that the staff was relying on a letter that we admittedly provided, but we disagreed with the staff's interpretation of that letter. And so we provided a supplemental letter from our physician, and that's what you have before you now. So I would request that you review that letter in making your decision and not rely on what I would say is a misinterpretation of a prior letter. We wanted to provide further clarification for the board, and we got that on Sunday, I think. And so we immediately asked our physician to clarify, and she did, and that's why it was not in the original package, but you have it before you now.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
I don't know where I'm going to come out on this because mosquito bites and reactions to mosquito bites are pretty ubiquitous. And so if that's going to be a criteria for a disability, I just feel like I need to give that some thought.
I'll just note that I don't think the board received the original letter. Right? Was the original letter in our packet?
No, it was not.
Right. And so that.
Right.
There's a lot there, that's I guess a discussion for this process. For this.
Wait, the original letter from the doctor?
They usually don't, because
we usually don't get it.
Right. Share medical because it's personal. And so they don't put it into staff.
The doctor.
I thought it was in here.
Yeah, it's in the application.
Oh, did I miss it?
I think it's in there somewhere. Hold on.
I might have missed it.
Yeah, here it is. It's on page 27 of 43 in the packet.
I totally missed it.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Apart from the debate about whether this is medically necessary, where does the staff come out on this application? In other words, when I look at the back of the house and I see the patio and it looks to me not unreasonable to enclose it. But I didn't know if when we're talking about a 1.5% or something of coverage, if that's where the staff comes down on the rationale. Maybe I missed it in the report. I did read it, but I'm I can see where, given that the structure is already there, even though it's evaluated differently from a patio versus a porch, it looks like a deck. It doesn't look like a patio, but it's a matter of interpretation. So I'm just curious as to whether or not, if we set aside the medical issue for now, would the conclusion be the same, that for a minor increase in the coverage, it would be the recommendation would still be for denial?
Stephen, if you're
I'm
would like to
guessing,
comment,
yeah,
let me know.
Blake wants me to take that one.
No, I'm happy to chime in, but
Nah, I got it. It's fine.
have you chime in as well.
Ms. Freshman, I would say that the medical condition was one of the criteria that staff did not find the applicants in favor of, but it was not the only one. I think the applicant in their presentation this evening tried to address one of the other criteria that we didn't find them in favor of. In the staff report, we note that they are very close to their coverage limit. The existing structure that was originally built in 2018 with the smaller rear deck was conforming at that time. And they would have the ability to build a smaller screen-in porch. I think the applicants have explained to you why they don't find that to be possible for them. And so staff didn't consider, I guess, the usability of that space, only whether it was physically possible for them to have an alternative by right option, which was the case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rizzi,
Yes.
how much smaller, what's the difference in size, actual feet we're talking about?
I might need some help figuring that out.
It's 193
Yeah,
because
my
it's
camera
10,000 square foot lot.
No, the size of the permissible porch versus the asked for porch. What would be the difference in size?
I don't think it gives us I don't see the dimensions of the patio itself on.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe it's on the.
I've got the patio on dimensions on one of the drawings. I want to say it's like 243.
Yeah, it's 14.9 by 23.4.
I have a question for the applicant. Does this child have any accommodations at school for recess or phys ed for not going outside?
No, she does not.
And how about participating in extracurricular sports?
She's allowed to, but that doesn't mean that she's not hesitant to. And
Does she?
That she is hesitant to. We push her to do it. We absolutely do. She gets nervous about it. And in fact, recently over the summer, there was a tryout for a sports team. And the night before, she had an issue with a bug biting her, and she did not want to go, and she refused to go. We pushed her. We made her go. So I'm not going to say that we don't make her go outside. As her dad, I'm just trying to make it as easy for her as possible when she's home with us.
I will also say that, she plays softball and they're on like dirt, and mosquitoes have not been as much of an issue. Our backyard is like a haven.
Just like a lot of Arlington.
And so it is like, she will not go in our backyard. She just won't.
Yeah.
And
So we don't want to leave you with the impression that we're not, like, she's in the bubble and not going outside. That's not the case. It's our house. It's our backyard. And we push her. We make her go outside when she needs to.
Thank you.
And on the question of the size, they actually have lot coverage on page 25 of 43. It notes the rear porch, no changes to coverage, 344.1 square feet. The total of 2,905 is just about 100 square feet. It's 105 square feet above what would be permissible. So it would be a approximately 240 square feet that would be permissible. What they're asking for is 344.
So that's 10 by 10.
240 would be
No, the
considerably larger.
difference between 340 and 240.
Oh, yeah, the difference would be a 10 by 10.
Can I ask
10
a
by 15.
question?
Yeah. Of course.
Can you just, where were the numbers you were just pointing to?
Oh, sorry. Meg, do you mind if I share my screen?
It's page 25.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I can actually pull up. I've got the
So
report open.
you could have a porch that's
This
so
is what they.
what?
So this was the 344.1 that I was referencing. The allowable square footage is 2,800. And based off of the 344, it puts them just 105 square feet over.
So
I think this is what we submitted, and it was under our internal rules. And this is again a question I have. If you go to page 4 of the staff recommendation, they say that they will only allow 150 square foot patio or screened-in porch, and so it's a difference of 246 square feet, and that was something I was confused by the staff's recommendation.
Ah, okay. Jillian, do you want to chime in? Actually, I'm getting notes from a plan reviewer in real time.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. What was the question for?
On page 4 of the staff analysis, it says, as such, it is possible for a smaller rear screened-in porch of approximately 150 square feet.
I'm the author of the report. I'm gonna take that,
Yeah.
Jillian. You don't have to do it. I'm gonna offer 2 options. One, I messed up my numbers. That happens. The second is I think that staff may have calculated the size a little bit larger than the applicants did in their analysis. I think that we came up with a number that was closer to 226.50 for the existing main building footprint, not including that porch. And it looks like they came up with 2360. So I think that there might have been, and again, we're reviewing just using software. I can't say whose number is right, but we did, I think, use a more conservative number just based off of calculations that we were getting. And Jillian, please feel free to correct me if I've said anything wrong.
So bottom line, what do we believe they're entitled to build without the variance?
Bottom line is they're allowed to build a screened-in deck. It may be as small as 150 if staff's calculations are correct, which would be quite small.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it's okay. The main building footprint that is allowed for this lot is 28,000 square feet for the main building footprint. The final survey that was certified by the engineer, the main building footprint was 2,648 without the screen porch. And if we subtract that to the 2,800, they only have 152 square feet to be exact, to be by right, and that's like the maximum allowed for them for a screen porch. But they're proposing to have 300, I think estimated was 344 square feet, because the dimensions that they provided on their plans was a 23 feet 4 inches by 14 feet 9 inches and a half. So for percentage, they are 29.92%, But they are only allowed 28% by right, so they're over 1.92%.
While people are thinking, I want to ask a separate question, which I think is fairly simple. Looking at, I'm on page 19 of 43, the drawing, and what it shows is a setback to the rear patio of only 24 feet. Is that any problem, or is that allowed?
That would be allowed, Miss McCroskey, because porches are allowed to encroach 4 feet to the rear. So the minimum would be 21 feet.
Gotcha. Thank you. And that wouldn't change with the roof because that just makes it a porch structure, but it still can encroach.
Yes, the eave would be allowed 19.5.
Thank you.
Anything further from my colleagues or discussion?
So clearly, it's quite, what they're asking for is quite a bit more than what they would be allowed under the ordinance. And absent any other, considerations, I don't know why we would support it. So it really comes down to the reason, and I'm not sure that, the medical issue is persuasive because it's so ubiquitous.
I do understand that having reactions to mosquito bites is like everybody gets mosquito bites and gets, swollen and itchy, but that's why we also included a photo, even though we were worried about privacy implications for our child, because most people who get mosquito bites don't look like that. And then she looks like that for a couple days. And she doesn't even want to go to school when she looks like that. I mean, it's a real issue. It's not a disease, but when you're a kid and you look like that and having to go to school, it is a real issue.
So I know this isn't aesthetically pleasing, but I know that many families have enclosed their decks with basically curtains, right, that keep the mosquitoes out, because it's really only a summertime issue, and that's what they've used. So that they can use their decks during the summer. Your solution is a year-round solution rather than just a mosquito season solution.
I mean, for curtains, we would need poles or something to hold them up. I mean, we would have to create some type of structure even for that.
And also part of it is enjoying or like as the doctor said, mental health. Like it's not just being physically outside, but seeing outside and seeing nature. And I mean, frankly, I don't think we would put curtains up where she couldn't even see the outside.
They have screen, like screen curtains that, let the air out. You can see it. It's just not permanent. I know neighbors that, use that to keep the mosquitoes off their decks. I'm just throwing out ideas for you.
No, I appreciate it.
I don't know if anybody thinks differently. Unfortunately, I do think that given the very large size of the house and this back patio that's been built apparently without approval, and I understand it wasn't these applicants, but I don't think that this application meets the standard for a variance. So I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution denying variance V1199024 VA1.
I will second that.
A motion made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Malice for denial. Is there any further discussion? We'll call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
No.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
No. Motion for denial fails 3-2. Anyone else like to make a motion?
I'll move the Board of Zoning Appeals. Hello? Adopt the alternative resolution. Approval is advertised. Variance V-11990-24-VA1. Sorry? Yeah. Leave alone. Did you hear me?
I did.
Stephen, were you able to hear the discussion of the board?
I heard Miss Freshman's second motion that's been made. We just didn't hear most of the votes for the last motion or what was said then. So I've picked up on what's happened, but just a gentle reminder, please have your microphones on when you're voting. It helps for the record.
Thank you for the clarification.
Was there a second to that?
Yeah, second.
A motion made by Ms. Freshman for approval, seconded by Ms. Clark. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
No.
Ms. Freshman. Ms. Clark.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 3-2. All the agenda having been completed, we are adjourned. Tomorrow.
We got.
Well, for our